What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto is ran out of Konoha at the age of 5 and meets up with Zabuza Momochi? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Run, run! It was midnight and the village of Konoha was in an uproar. Dozens of people ran through the streets, each of them carrying a torch or a knife or some other lethal-looking item. They were searching for someone. They were searching for Naruto. Said Naruto was currently hiding behind a large building, nursing a nasty burn on his left shoulder. He knew that he healed better than normal people, though he didn't know why, and so he wasn't that worried about it becoming something worse than it was. It still hurt like hell though. He looked up and sighed as he saw two more people run past, each carrying an iron pitchfork. Why did they hate him so much? What had he ever done to them? Sure, he was a prankster, but so were a lot of kids his age. Surely he didn't deserve this? Look, yelled a voice from the street, I found him. The demon is here. Naruto cursed and dashed out of the alley, nearly 24 angry villagers hot on his tail. Why weren't the Anbu coming? Why wasn't the Hokage coming? Why wasn't anyone trying to help him? Naruto recognized the street that he was on and took a right turn toward his apartment, hoping that he could hide in there until his attackers calmed down. The sight that awaited him was not at all a pretty one. His building was on fire. Black fumes rised up around it. Two ninjas stood on the rooftops of nearby buildings, blowing more fire onto his home. Naruto was horrified, but he didn't have time to cry, not while the village mob continued to chase him. Naruto ran again. Naruto's 5-year-old mind was working overtime as he tried, desperately to find a way out of this. Off in the distance he spied the gates of Konoha and sadly nodded to himself. He hated to even consider it, but he knew that he had no choice at this point. He had to leave the village hidden in the leaves. He would die if he didn't. He moved as fast as his young legs could carry him, his few months at the ninja academy being the only thing that allowed him to stay out of the grasps of the longer-legged villagers. He saw the gates slowly closing. He wasn't sure if he was going to make it. The Anbu guard on duty was closing the wooden doors, though he did so slowly that Naruto suspected that he really didn't care if he escaped or not. Either way they would be rid of him. A moment before the doors closed, Naruto slipped through them, a tear rolling down his face. Shouts of, "Good riddance," and, "Never come back demon," reverberated from behind the closed doors. Sarutobi dashed towards the gates in panic. Only a moment ago he had been in his office, doing all sorts of boring, tedious paperwork, when the academy instructor Amino Iruka had come to him, telling him that Naruto's house was being burned down by the villagers and that Naruto himself was nowhere to be found. Apparently Iruka had tried to stop them but had been unable to do anything. The third Hokage arrived at the gates to find an enormous mob of what had to be every able-bodied man and woman that wasn't a ninja in the entire village. Of course no ninja would dare take part in it lest they incur the Hokage's wrath, but that didn't mean that they had to put their whole effort into helping the boy. "What are you people doing?" he asked with terrible fury evident in his voice. The villagers turned and looked up at their Hokage in fear. No one answered his question. "You foolish people," he continued, "how dare you do such horrid things to a child? You should all be ashamed of yourselves." Without waiting for an answer, Sarutobi jumped clear over the gates and ran into the woods to try and find Naruto. Meanwhile, a young girl with pink hair watched from her window and wondered. A young boy named Haku paced around the area outside his camp. He had been traveling for a while now with his new master Zabuza, the famed swordsman of the Hidden Mist. Over the past few months he had seen things and learned things that he had never even dreamed of back in the Hidden Mist village. Zabuza said that with time he would become a perfect weapon. Haku wanted nothing more than to aid the man who had given him his life back. A low sound interrupted Haku's musings. He strained his ears to try and hear better. The sound was coming from a point not too far away from where he was, in the opposite direction of the camp. He walked toward the sound and was surprised when he recognized it as sobbing. It didn't take long for him to find the source, a boy even slightly younger than himself with blonde hair, blue eyes, and odd-looking whisker marks on his cheeks, crying his heart out. The boy hadn't seen him yet. Not sure what to do, he ran back to alert Zabuza. "Zabuza-sama," he exclaimed as he reached the campsite. The demon of the Hidden Mist looked up. "There is a boy in the forest and he seems to be very upset." What should we do? Zabuza thought for a moment. A boy? Upset? Why would he care about that? Even if he did care, he wasn't sure what Haku wanted him to do about it. He wasn't exactly known for his ability to comfort others. On the other hand, maybe he should go check it out. If not for the prospect of gaining another follower, then at least it would improve Haku's trust in him. He supposed that there would be no harm in going to see the boy. Zabuza slowly stood up and nodded. Lead the way, Haku, he said. A moment later they were heading in the direction Haku had found the blonde boy. Haku couldn't hear his crying anymore, and for a moment he was afraid that the boy had left, but he hadn't. He had simply stopped crying, his red and swollen eyes being the only remaining evidence that he had been crying at all. Zabuza sighed but walked over so that he was standing directly in front of the boy. The blonde-haired child looked up into the eyes of the demon of the hidden mist. Zabuza saw sadness in his eyes that surpassed even Haku's when they had first met, and hidden behind this sadness was an inner strength that Zabuza had never seen before. Zabuza could tell that this boy would become strong one day, with or without his help. "What's your name, kid?" the swordsman asked. "Naruto." The boy answered, "Uzumaki Naruto." Zabuza nodded, wondering what he should do next. He turned to Haku, who simply gestured him to continue. "So," he continued, "what are you doing out here by yourself?" Naruto looked down again. "My village hates me," he answered. "I don't even know why. They call me demon and monster, but I don't know what I did wrong." Zabuza almost looked sorry for Naruto. He turned around and sat down next to him. "A demon, huh? Well, people have called me a demon before too." Surprised, Naruto looked up to him. "So I guess that makes us both demons." The swordsman continued. "Who are you?" Naruto asked. "I am Momochi Zabuza, master swordsman of the Hidden Mist Village." He replied, "I am also one of the greatest ninja in the world." Naruto looked sad again. "I was going to be a ninja," he stated. "I wanted to become Hokage one day, so that people would respect me. I even entered the academy a few weeks ago, but now I'll never be a ninja." His eyes began to tear again. Zabuza smiled, though you would never be able to tell under the wrappings that covered his face. "Well, you don't have to give up just yet," he replied. Naruto looked up in confusion. "I am a ninja," Zabuza continued. "I already have an apprentice, but I don't think I'd mind having another one, and I'm sure Haku would enjoy your company. He has seemed a bit lonely." Zabuza surprised even himself by how kind he was able to make himself in this situation. "But you would have to listen to everything I tell you, no matter how hard it is for you." He stood up again and held his hand down. Naruto didn't know what to say. In a way he felt as though he had been given another chance. He could tell that this person was strong, and that he could help make Naruto strong as well. Perhaps he should follow this person and become a ninja under his teachings. On the other hand, many of the things that Konoha had done to him had made the poor boy untrusting. Could he really believe that this person would just offer him a new life right out of the blue? Furthermore, what did he mean when he said that he would have to listen to his orders, no matter how hard it is? What should he do? When Naruto didn't answer, Zabuza lowered his hand and turned to Haku, who had just walked out from behind the trees. The swordsman shrugged as if to say, "I tried," and began to walk back to the camp. Haku looked sadly at Naruto, wishing that there was something he could do to help, but knowing that there was nothing. He turned to follow Zabuza. Naruto sighed. He didn't know if he could trust these people, but the alternative was to sit here until he starved or until someone else came along. And someone else might not be as willing to help as these people. Naruto stood up, wiped the tears from his eyes and ran after the two people who had offered him another chance at life. Had he stayed for only another moment, Sarutobi would have found him, would have gone back to the village, re-entered the academy, become a genin, and wouldn't have seen Zabuza or Haku again for 7 years. But he didn't. 5 years had passed since the day that Naruto had left the village hidden in the leaves. Naruto, Haku, and Zabuza trained nearly every day together. The demon of the hidden mist had taught both boys very well. Naruto enjoyed the rigorous training and had learned so much from them. In the beginning, Zabuza had been disappointed with Naruto. He had learned at a much slower pace than Haku, and even some of the most basic jutsu had been difficult for him. But Naruto had refused to give up, and eventually the gap had narrowed. He was now excellent at Suidan and basic ninjutsu. His taijutsu was better than Haku's, and his swordsmanship was top-notch. The team truly was a great one. He didn't always enjoy what he did for a living, The first time he had ever killed someone was when he was 8. It was in self-defense, sure, but it still traumatized him. However, he had made a promise to Zabuza that he would follow his orders no matter how difficult, and he was not going to break a promise to the man who had saved his existence. The trio's current mission was to Suna. Naruto always liked going to Suna, for that was where his only other friend, Gaara of the Sand, lived. He had met Gaara only a few months after he had first started his life with Zabuza, and the two had created a fast friendship due to their similar lives. Gaara had apparently been hated and feared throughout Suna due to a sand demon that had been sealed into him at birth. Naruto had wondered when he heard this if something similar had happened to him, but had shrugged it off as unimportant now that he had people who accepted him. Naruto had asked Gaara to come along as a fourth member of their group, but Zabuza hadn't allowed it. Either way, Naruto was glad that he was seeing his friend again. He hadn't met with Gaara in years. "Hey Haku," he whispered so that Zabuza couldn't hear, "what's our mission again?" "I wasn't paying much attention when Zabuza-sama told us." Haku rolled his eyes but smiled just the same. "There's been a person going around at Suna at night, killing people. We're going to stop him." Naruto frowned. Stop him, the blonde boy knew, meant, kill him. Naruto didn't like killing. "How did we get picked for this job?" he asked. "Surely the case cage wouldn't hire 3 missing nin for a problem within his own village?" Haku nodded. "The case cage didn't hire us, one of his aides did. The case cage doesn't know about us." Haku seemed to think for a second before continuing. "Actually, Zabuza-sama thinks that the aide asked us to do it because he thinks the perpetrator is a shinobi and he doesn't want to risk one of his own men being injured." Naruto smirked. "But it's okay for us to get hurt, right?" Haku nodded. "Zabuza-sama isn't angry though. The pay is surprisingly high for such a simple mission." Haku smiled and ruffled Naruto's hair. "Nothing we shouldn't be able to handle, Aotuto?" Naruto scowled. True, Haku had always been like an older brother to him, but it was still annoying when he treated him as though he was still 5. A few hours later, the 3 assassins were behind the walls of Suna. Zabuza sat quietly by the window as he watched the sunset. Haku was reading an orange book of some sort whose title Naruto couldn't see. And Naruto himself was lying back on the couch with an annoyed expression on his face. He had looked through the entire village and had found no sign of Gaara. Now all he could look forward to was the stupid mission. "When are we going to start this?" he yelled in annoyance. Zabuza didn't turn away from the window. "The killer has only appeared at night so far," he answered. "We have a bit more time before we go out." Naruto cursed under his breath. He didn't want to wait anymore. He just wanted to get out of this stupid village. Needless to say, Gaara's unexplained absence had lowered his liking of Suna considerably. "I'm getting something to eat," Naruto stated. "I'll be back before nightfall." Naruto walked down the streets of Suna, a stick of dango in his mouth. It was later than he had anticipated, but he wasn't that worried. Zabuza-sama had probably left already. Then when he returned, he would yell at Naruto and give him some sort of horrible, body-numbing exercise to do for training. Well, maybe he was a little worried. Suddenly he stopped. His nose twitched. There was an odd smell on the air. It was masked slightly by the dust, but it was still one that Naruto would recognize anywhere. Blood, and lots of it. The blonde shinobi turned around and jumped onto a nearby rooftop, hoping that the less crowded air would give him a better sense of where the smell was coming from. Naruto sniffed again, and cursed. The scent was coming from behind him, in the opposite direction of the place where his comrades were staying. He now had 2 choices. He could return to alert Zabuza and Haku and risk the person getting away, or he could head for the source of the scent by himself. Cursing once again, he turned around and dashed off toward the scent. A few moments later, he jumped onto a rooftop and crouched down, sniffing again. The scent was coming from here, but obviously there was nothing here. What had happened? Had they already disappeared and cleaned up the evidence? So wrapped up in his own thoughts was he that he didn't hear the flying kunai until it was less than a few inches away from him. Naruto quickly twisted away, the kunai barely grazing his shirt, and unsheathed his long katana. There were 3 of them. Each wore a simple Suna vest and held a kunai in each hand. Well, one of them whispered. "The famed Momochi Zabuza is too good for us," so he said, one of his little brats, eh? Naruto frowned. This was a trap then? For Zabuza-sama? What of the nightly murders then? Had that been only a tale to lure Naruto's sensei out? Naruto looked over the three that had ambushed him. The vests that they wore suggested that they were Chunin or Junin rank. Far stronger than Naruto could handle. But their stances were sloppy, and they looked apprehensive about attacking. Naruto suspected that they were not ninja at all, just a few punks that hoped to intimidate people by dressing as people stronger than they were. Naruto smirked and stabbed his blade into the ground, then brought his hands together to make a hand seal. One of the enemies jumped toward Naruto and swung his kunai in a mad arc. Naruto twisted around him and slammed his foot into the man's back, sending him sprawling onto the ground. The blonde shinobi cycled through a couple more hand seals and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Suiten! Mizuken!" He clenched his hand into a fist and slammed it forward, causing an enormous fist of water to shoot out of the ground and slam into the other two attackers, knocking them unconscious. Naruto turned to the man on the floor, yanked his katana out of the ground, and slashed it downward. A moment before Naruto's blade connected, a large stone wall rose up out of the ground and smashed into his shoulder, knocking him over and bruising him badly. Naruto rose to his feet and turned his head in the direction that the wall had come from. A fourth man was standing there, smirking, his hands still connected in a hand seal. Naruto glared at him. There was no denying that this man was a ninja. That was a cheap shot, Naruto stated, though his voice was completely calm. Zabuza had taught him long ago that yelling at your attackers got you nowhere. It was much more effective to sound indifferent. The man smirked. "You must be one of those brats that follow that freak Zabuza around," he stated, obviously trying to anger the young shinobi. It worked. Naruto slammed his hands together and screamed, "Suiten! Miserapa!" releasing a large blast of water from his mouth. The Suna ninja smirked and called out, "Doden! Doro Gashi!" A large section of the roof of the building rose up to block the water blast. Naruto clenched his hand around his sword and started to move forward, only to be stopped as he watched to his horror. A half-dozen ninja jump out of the hole in the roof and circle around him. Naruto looked back and forth in fear. This was not good. One ninja he might be able to hold off, but seven. Swallowing his doubt, Naruto held his blade up in a defensive position. One of the ninja made a hand seal and yelled, "Kaden! Gukakyu no Jutsu!" Naruto jumped backwards in an attempt to dodge the fire blast, only to be slammed in the back of the head by the blunt end of one of his attacker's kunai. He slowly drifted into unconsciousness. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. He was back in their hotel room. Haku was sitting on a chair next to his bed. Zabuza was nowhere to be found. "Good morning, Naruto," Haku stated once he realized that the blonde boy was awake. "What happened?" Naruto asked in response. Haku smiled. "That was a clever thing you did, screaming out your jutsu like that. Obviously Zabuza and I heard you and came running to help. We must have arrived right when you were hit in the head." Naruto nodded. "And you and Zabuza-sama are okay?" Haku's smile widened. "Of course." The Suna ninja insisted on fighting Zabuza alone and he ended the fight in only a few seconds. "We rushed you back here after that to make sure you weren't seriously injured." Naruto chuckled at the thought of 7 ninja all fighting his sensei at once. "So then," he continued, "what was the deal with the murderer and all?" Haku scowled. "There was no murderer." He answered, "The person who hired us was apparently a friend of someone Zabuza killed in the past. This was all just a setup so that we would come and he could have his revenge." Zabuza was pretty annoyed when he heard that we wouldn't get any money for this. Just at that moment the door opened and in walked Zabuza himself, a furious scowl on his face. He turned to face Naruto. "So, you were late last night." Naruto grabbed the blankets that covered him and pulled them up to his chin. Zabuza walked over to him, grabbed his hair roughly, and yanked him up so that the two were looking eye to eye. "You told me you'd be back before nightfall. With your healing rate you should be up and out of bed in a few hours, and when you are, you'd better prepare for the toughest training course of your life." He pushed Naruto back into the bed and walked out of the room. Naruto chuckled. Zabuza acted tough and nasty, but the young shinobi knew that it was only a ruse. Naruto would bet his katana that Zabuza had been waiting outside the door, waiting for Naruto to wake up so that he could make sure he was okay. The demon of the hidden mist would of course give him a gruelingly tough training exercise, but the reason was not to punish Naruto, but rather because he had worried the demon by being hurt and he wanted to push Naruto so that next time he wouldn't need to come and rescue him. Then Hiku would offer to do the training as well, telling Zabuza it is because he wishes to better himself but really just wanting to comfort and help Naruto through it. Naruto knew this because it had all happened many times before. This was his life, and this was what his life would be for a long time to come. 2 years later, on a pathway just outside Konoha, walked a group of 9 people, 6 genin, 2 junin sensei, and an old bridge builder. Hitaki Kakashi, the famed copy ninja of Konoha, walked in front, a bored look on his face. Or what could be seen of it anyways. Behind him walked the 3 members of his genin team, Uchiha Sasuke, one of the 2 last known members of the famed Uchiha clan and Rookie of the Year, Haruno Sakura, one of Sasuke's most adamant fangirls and a theoretical genius, and Satsu Rokuju, a much-hated bully who liked nothing more than to see others in pain. In the middle walked a man named Tazuna, a bridge builder from the Land of Waves who had hired these ninja to defend him on his trip back home. Bringing up the rear was Yuichi Kurenai, a newly instated Junin and master genjutsu user, and her own team, Inazuka Kiba, a rough and rugged boy who was never seen without his canine sidekick Akamaru, Aburame Shino, the quiet boy that was known for being a living hive for a large number of chakra-eating bugs, and Hyuga Hinata, a timid girl with little confidence despite the fact that she was the heiress to the strongest clan in all of Konoha. Kiba was exited. This was after all his first ever C-rank mission, even if he did have to share it with another team. "Hey Shino," he whispered to his teammate, "what so you think are the odds that we'll be doing some actual fighting here?" The bug user shrugged. "Honestly," he replied, "not very high. Since this is only a C-rank mission, the only people who would be attacking are simple bandits, and with 8 bodyguards I would think most bandits would simply wait for an easier target." Kiba cursed. The only reason that they had gone on this C-ranked mission was that Kiba had been complaining about the ease and boringness of the D-ranked ones, and Kurenai had apparently spoken to the Hokage about it. The Sandaime had agreed, but only on the condition that a second team also be sent out to help make sure no one got hurt. But what was the point of going on a higher-ranked mission if they weren't going to fight anything? In the Land of Waves, Naruto sat down in a dark room and listened to his sensei as he made a business deal with a short, fat man named Gato. "Your prices are high, Mr. Momochi," the slimy man stated, "but I also know that you are the best in the business." Zabuza scowled. "Don't try and flatter me, Gato. Just tell me what my job is and what you are willing to pay me." Gato nodded. "There is a man named Tazuna, a bridge builder who is becoming a serious threat to my boating business and also to the economics of the Land of Waves. I want you to kill him before he finishes his bridge. I have tried to threaten him with my own men, but the greedy man simply refuses to back down." Naruto looked up, and this man, Tazuna, he interrupted, "Does he have any family?" Gato slowly shook his head. "No. He is just a lonely and greedy man who only cares about money and doesn't stop to consider how many people he harms getting it. Many people are employed by my boating business, and if he finishes his bridge all of them will be out of a job. Anyways, as to your pay." Naruto didn't want to hear anymore. Roughly he stood up and walked out of the room and onto a large balcony. A moment later he heard the door open again and turned to see that Hiku had followed him out. "Are you alright, Otuto?" he asked. Naruto slowly nodded. "It's just, even if this man is a heartless and selfish person with no family who only cares about money, does he really deserve to die?" Hiku placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I don't agree with it either," he replied, "but you're not a bad person if that's what's bothering you." Naruto shook his head. "How can you say that? I've killed so many people. Many of whom I'm sure didn't deserve to die. People back in Konoha used to call me a demon because of this thing inside me." Maybe they were right. Hiku shook his head. "Don't say that, Naruto, you've also done so many good things. You have saved the lives of just as many people. You have even saved Zabuza-sama." Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. "I don't remember ever saving Zabuza." He replied, "When did that happen?" Hiku smiled. "You remember what Zabuza was like when we first found you. He was bloodthirsty and cruel. He didn't care who he killed as long as he was paid well for it. You changed him, you taught him how to love. He'd never let anyone see it, and still has a long ways to go, but I believe you have already saved his spirit." As Hiku finished, the door opened and Zabuza stepped out onto the balcony. "We've got our new jobs," he stated. "I'm sending the demon brothers out first. Naruto, I want you to follow them with one of your shadow clones. Apparently this Tazuna person has hired a few ninja bodyguards, so I want you to watch what happens with the demon brothers. Find out who our enemies are and then report back to me." Naruto rolled his eyes. The demon brothers, Guzu and Maizu, were two of Zabuza's temporary followers. Naruto called them temporary because followers like them rarely lasted more than a few months. Some died, others panicked and quit when they saw the dangers of following a missing nin. It honestly annoyed him when they picked up people like that. After all, Naruto and Haku should be more than enough for whatever job Zabuza wanted them to do, right? But he nodded anyways and turned to go inform the brothers. Kakashi was on his guard. That was the third time they had passed a puddle just like this one. This of course wouldn't be a big deal except that it hadn't rained in weeks and there was no other body of water around here. He turned his head back to look at Kurenai, who nodded, showing that she too had noticed something amiss. He didn't have much time to think it over, however, as two figures seemed to appear out of nowhere, each with a metal claw on one of their hands and a lethal-looking chain connecting the claws. So shocked at this sudden attack was Kakashi that he didn't even move as the two mist Chunin quickly wrapped their chain around him and squeezed until the jagged edges of the chain tore completely through his body. The surrounding genin and Tazuna looked on in shock as what was left of Sharingan Kakashi fell to the ground. Naruto smirked as he watched the fight from the treetops. Of course he could tell that the Junin was about as dead as he was, probably waiting to see what he brothers would do. Naruto took this time to observe the 6 genin. 2 of them were fighting crazily, without any apparent strategy to their wild punches. One of these he could tell as being an Inuzuka both from the fang-like markings on his face and the small pup that fought with him. The other didn't seem to come from a clan and fought only with the basic academy taijutsu. Another, who he could instantly tell was a Hyuga girl, looked terrified. She was shaking so badly that Naruto might have thought she was having a seizure, and even when one of the 2 brothers went for her she didn't move. The other girl, a pink-haired one who Naruto had to admit was very pretty, was keeping her cool but seemed to be overwhelmed by her more powerful enemies and allies. The only 2 that seemed to know what they were doing were a boy who used strange bugs that came out of his body and kept his face covered, obviously an Aburame, and another boy whose taijutsu style revealed him to be an Uchiha. But something bothered Naruto. Why was there genin here at all? If Tazuna knew that he was in danger from one of the richest men on earth, why would any ninja village send 6 genin? And ones as fresh out of the academy as these ones obviously were. For as much money as he had, Gato could have hired anyone, and in fact he had hired someone who was way too dangerous for these kids. At that moment, the Junin reappeared out of the ground, quickly knocked the 2 brothers out, and began speaking to his teammates. Naruto strained his ears to hear the conversation. These ninja were unexpected, stated the silver-haired Junin. Tazuna only paid for a C-ranked mission, but this elevates it to a B or rank. Well, that explained Naruto's original question, but it also raised another question. Why wouldn't this man pay for the best protection? We're not experienced enough for these kinds of battles, stated the pink-haired girl, even with Kakashi-sensei and Kurenai-sensei. We should go back. Wait, did she just say Kakashi? As in the famed Sharingan Kakashi. Zabuza-sama would want to hear about this. The other Junin, Kurenai, he believed she was called, nodded. This is too much for our young students. We should go back and send a more experienced group. The Inuzuka boy looked furious. Oh no, he yelled. I am not going back to doing stupid D-ranked missions. I say we keep going. The Aburame stepped up. Kiba, stop being rash for a moment and consider what we would be getting into. We have no experience fighting other ninja. If this happens again and one of the Junin sensei aren't around, then we'll deal with it. Kiba yelled in annoyance. We're not babies, you know, we're ninja. And ninja don't give up when the road gets a little more bumpy than expected. Naruto couldn't help but be impressed. This boy certainly had guts, even if he did need a little polishing. If he lived long enough, Naruto was sure he could be a strong shinobi. Kakashi seemed to think for a moment. Well, maybe we should ask the boy in the trees what he thinks? Naruto cursed. In many ways Haruno Sakura was an ordinary girl. She was intelligent but her skills were nothing to be particularly impressed with. She was pretty but had nothing that particularly singled her out as exceedingly beautiful besides her pink hair. She didn't come from a prestigious family. She wasn't particularly well known for anything other than her obsession with Uchiha Sasuke, and even that wasn't very unusual. But there was one thing that she had that gave her the potential to be greater than any of the other, seemingly superior girls in the village hidden in the leaves. She had the drive, ambition, and thirst to prove herself, to push herself to achieve anything that she wanted, whatever that may be. That was why she was the most assertive of all the girls about trying to get Sasuke as a boyfriend. That was why she was able to, despite her dismal physical capabilities, gain the middle of the class through constant study. And that was why she was the only genin in the group that had the knowledge to realize just how much stronger this new boy was than the two they had just encountered. He was slightly taller than Sasuke, and slightly more muscular. He wore a dark gray long-sleeve shirt with an ice blue flaming spiral insignia on the front and a kanji for Little Demon on the back, and dark blue denim jeans. His ninja shoes had closed toes and he had bandages that wrapped around his arms, similar to that of a bizarre, green spandex-wearing boy that she remembered seeing once or twice back in Konoha, except that this blonde-haired boy's also apparently extended over his chest and up to his lower face. He carried a long, sleek katana that had no handguard and apparently no sheath, simply being tucked behind a midnight blue cloth belt. He carried himself with a simple confidence that seemed either foolish or perhaps frightening considering who his enemies are, and even from 20 yards away she could feel the sheer force of his chakra surrounding her. However, this strength didn't seem to carry any killing intent with it. In fact, it almost seemed friendly. That combined with his cheerful smile made it difficult for Sakura to be afraid of him, but she knew and forced herself not to let her guard down. Sasuke, on the other hand, seemed to detect no threat at all from this new boy and boldly walked out to face him. The Uchiha dropped into a fighting stance, but the blonde-haired boy held his arms up and took a step back. "I'm not here to fight," he said nervously, "at least not yet. There's no way I could last more than a couple minuets against one Junin, let alone two and their genin teams." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He didn't let up his fighting stance. "Who are you?" he asked with a hint of anger in his voice. "Who am I?" he asked, seemingly to himself. "I suppose I can tell you that. My name is Naruto. Momochi Naruto. And who are you?" "I mean, I know that you are an Uchiha, but honestly I wasn't aware that there were any of them left." "Are you a survivor of the famed Uchiha massacre?" Sasuke's eyes opened wide in fury for just a moment and he charged at Naruto. He jumped and kicked at the blonde-haired boy in midair, who simply smiled and grabbed his foot, twisting him into the ground. His rage growing, Sasuke slammed his foot upward, but Naruto simply brought his own knee up to block the blow. Now furious, Sasuke slammed his hands together and cycled through a few hand signs while screaming, "Kaden! Gukok Yu no Jutsu!" creating an intense blast of fire from his mouth that, to the shock of nearly everyone around, completely engulfed Naruto. It seemed as though Sasuke had already won. Sakura was astounded that this seemingly strong person had lost like that, but at the same time ecstatic that her beloved Sasuke had won so fast. "Yeah, Sasuke!" she yelled, "You really are the greatest, Sasuke. No one can defeat you." Sasuke didn't answer. He simply lay down on the ground, staring at the bright, dissipating flames. And when the flames disappeared, he opened his eyes wide in shock. Naruto stood, his blade out and held out defensively in front of himself. 2 burn marks were on the ground on either side of him, his remaining hand still holding onto Sasuke's foot. He had cut the flame in two. Naruto smiled and pulled Sasuke up by his foot. "Wow, I'm impressed," he stated. "I've never seen a rookie genin that can use jutsu that powerful." A confused look appeared on his face, but was that a yes or a no? Sasuke pulled a kunai out of his pack and stabbed it at Naruto. Sakura turned to look at her sensei in worry. "Kakashi-sensei, why aren't you stopping this? Sasuke could get hurt." Kakashi looked down at her and smiled serenely. "And to what effect?" he asked. "If the boy wanted to hurt Sasuke he would have already. And I think that this will be good for him." Sakura looked incredulous. "Good for him? How?" Kakashi looked up to the mock battle to see Sasuke on the ground once again, this time with a light bruise on his left arm. "Sasuke is too proud," he answered. "He thinks that because he is an Uchiha he must be the strongest person of his own age, and getting Rookie of the Year wasn't exactly a help. For him to be beaten so easily by a boy his own age, hopefully will humble him a bit and that will make him work harder in the future." "But, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi held up a hand to silence the girl. "Don't worry, Sakura," he said. "If it does get dangerous then I'll step in. For now I just want to see what I can find out about this boy." Oh look, Kiba has already joined the fight. Naruto smirked as the Inuzuka boy swung his fist at him. Effortlessly Naruto grabbed his fist and twisted it out of the way. The Inuzuka continued his attack by attempting to knee Naruto in the gut, but once again his attack was blocked with little effort. Kiba simply smirked and tilted his head downward. What are you doing? Naruto quickly had to duck his head as Kiba's small dog came soaring over his master's head, its mouth open and ready to maul Naruto's face off. Naruto slammed his head forward right as the dog passed over him, sending it sprawling to the ground. Kiba's eyes opened wide in shock, and then with a quick movement of his foot Naruto tripped the Inuzuka and sent him to the ground next to his dog. Naruto grinned. That was a pretty good move, he stated and jumped backwards, distancing himself from his opponent. Naruto had been telling the truth. The move had been both sneaky and brilliant for a young rookie genin. Once again he felt himself very impressed with the Inuzuka boy. He hoped that in the end he wouldn't have to be killed. He turned to view the remainder of his opponents. Two of the genin, the Aburame and the beautiful pink-haired girl, were standing in a defensive position, though both seemed ready to attack if they spotted an opening. Another, brown-haired boy wore a manic grin, as though he were simply enjoying the sight of his allies being beaten so badly, which made Naruto's stomach turn in disgust. And the Hyuga girl was still hiding behind the leg of the lady whom Naruto could only assume was her Junin sensei. The Junin themselves seemed completely unfazed by what was happening, not that he had expected anything different. He had purposely released a large amount of chakra before the fight had started in hopes that some of the smarter genin would sense it and stay back while the more rash ones attacked. He could probably beat them all at once, but he might actually have to push himself enough so that he would be forced to hurt them, which was something that he didn't want to do just yet. The Junin of course simply called the bluff and were now observing him, waiting to see what he would do. There was only one thing bothering him. He couldn't see where Tazuna had gone. Had he run away? No. Naruto could still sense his presence. He must be hidden under a genjutsu of some sort. His eyes moved over the two Junin expectantly, but he couldn't tell if they were doing anything or not. One of them must be a great master of genjutsu to be able to use one that could completely conceal the old man and not show any signs of creating it. His job was to find information on his enemies, and it was good that he had deduced that one of the Junin must a genjutsu master. But Zabuza-sama would want to know which one it is. Another thing that bothered him was that he was almost certain that he recognized one of the Junin from somewhere. It was the silver-haired one with the mask that covered his face, that almost seemed bored with the whole situation. Naruto wasn't exactly known for his ability to remember faces from the bingo books or wanted posters, so if he recognized this man, then he must be someone of monumental importance. He didn't have much time to worry about it though, as he heard the familiar whistling sound of a kunai cutting through the air and instinctively twisted his head out of the way. Annoyed now, Naruto turned and grabbed Kiba by the neck just as the dog boy was about to tackle him. I already told you idiots that I don't want to fight you. So why don't you just back off so that I can deliver my message? Kiba simply choked and tried, pointlessly, to try and pry Naruto's hand off of his neck. The sound of a second kunai caught Naruto's ears and he twisted his remaining arm around to catch the blade in midair, only to be met with a strong pain in his stomach. Kiba had slammed his knee into Naruto's gut. Naruto's muscles clenched instinctively and his grip on the Inuzuka's neck loosened, allowing him to pull free. Kiba grinned victoriously and swung his remaining fist directly at Naruto's face. Naruto twisted his head out of the way and grappled his arms around Kiba's shoulders. Will you stop for 2 seconds? He yelled into the Inuzuka's face. I told you twice now that I'm not here to fight, I only want to talk. Amazingly, Kiba's face took on a look of contemplation and the force of his struggling lessened considerably. He was beginning to listen to what Naruto was saying. Naruto's relief was short-lived however as another sound reached his ears. Kaden. Naruto's eyes opened wide in shock. Gukok Yuu. He couldn't use such a destructive jutsu with his teammate in the line of fire. No jutsu. Without thinking, Naruto shifted his arms around Kiba's shoulders, twisted to the side and tossed him out of the way. Then unsheathing his sword he turned to deflect the flames that he could feel coming up on him. Kakashi stared on with a shocked face as he watched his student attack his own teammate. He could understand that Sasuke was angry and annoyed, but he really thought that his student had learned the value of teamwork from his bell test. This was a serious disappointment. He decided that he would wait a little bit longer to see what would happen during this one-sided battle and then he would continue the mission. Sasuke needed to learn teamwork, and the only way that would happen is if he were to be put into a situation where he would be unable to succeed unless he worked with his team. Kakashi squinted his eye in an attempt to see what had happened now that the flames had started to dissipate. Sasuke smirked as he watched his flames disappear. Naruto stood, his head held downward and his blonde hair covering his eyes. The sleeve of his right arm had been burned off and the arm itself was badly damaged. As Sasuke had figured, the act of saving Kiba had slowed him down long enough so that he hadn't been able to deflect the entire blast. Well, whispered the Uchiha with more than a hint of superiority in his voice. Looks like the wisecracking idiot isn't as tough as he thinks he is. You should have known that there was no way you could have stood up to an Uchiha for long. As though someone had flipped a switch, the air suddenly changed. Sasuke staggered backwards, a look of terror on his face, and it was easy to tell why. Once crisp and clean, the air was now thick and heavy, and a powerful feeling of malice permeated everything. A strange red energy misted almost invisibly off of Naruto's figure. After a moment, Naruto spoke, in a voice that was far darker and more feral than it had been a moment ago. You would risk the well-being of your own ally, just to get to me? The red, mist-like energy intensified and Naruto turned his head up, revealing that his once blue eyes had turned piercing red. You disgust me. Sakura's hand went up to her throat. She felt as though she couldn't breathe, sweat oozed from her pale forehead, and she couldn't stop herself from shaking uncontrollably. Whatever reservations she had felt about the danger of this boy were now dashed. In desperation, she shoved her hands into her eyes, hoping against hope that she could shut out the horrible feeling that pierced into her very soul. Sakura felt a hand place itself on her shoulder and she looked up in the hope of seeing her sensei's comforting face, only to see her other teammate Satsu staring at the scene before him with an insane grin on his face. Looks like this is the end of your precious Uchiha twerp. He joked cruelly, but don't worry, if I can find a box small enough I'll help you gather up what's left of him. Sakura's eyes narrowed in hate. Sasuke won't lose, she whispered so quietly he could barely hear. Satsu raised an eyebrow. You blind? Or just stupid? Look at the jerk, he can't even stand upright, he's so scared. Sakura, against her better judgment, turned back to look at the fight again, and indeed Sasuke had fallen onto his back and was pathetically struggling to get back onto his feet, but only succeeding in flopping around on the ground like a fish. The kunoichi turned her head away again in fear. You're disgusting, she choked out. I hate you. Satsu simply shrugged. You hate me? Then you must really hate that Uchiha Teme. I mean, all I did was simply point out what was going to happen. He actually attacked that Inuzuka idiot. But I suppose I shouldn't be that surprised about your stinkin' double standard by now, eh? Sakura turned her head down and tried to block out all of the painful things that seemed to have all jumped on her so suddenly, but she couldn't help but recognize the truth in her cruel teammate's words. Sasuke had indeed risked Kiba's life for seemingly nothing. And then this Naruto boy, their enemy, had saved him, getting badly burned in the process. But no, she mustn't think like that. Sasuke was her hero, and this demon could never be a good guy. Certainly not a better guy than Sasuke-kun, right? Sasuke didn't really do anything that dangerous, did he? Kiba might have been hurt, but most of the fire would have been blocked by their enemy's body. Sasuke did what was necessary to try and defeat an enemy that he couldn't defeat otherwise, right? And surely this boy must have had some ulterior motive for saving Kiba. His intentions couldn't be pure, right? But then he seems so angry at Sasuke for risking Kiba. But no, he's just angry because Sasuke got him. That has to be the answer. Sasuke-kun was just doing his job and Naruto has some other, sinister reason for saving Kiba. Slowly Sakura looked up. Already the dark aura that cut through the air seemed less frightening. Kakashi was horrified. He, unlike any of the genin, recognized the energy perfectly, having been there the first time it had shown its face in the village hidden in the leaves. But in all his life he never expected to feel the power of the Kyuubi again. As far as he knew, the boy who had been chosen as the vessel of the Nine-Tailed had died years ago when he had fled the village. He still remembered the Hokage's rage as he executed the ringleaders of the group that had led the village in revolt against the Kyuubi boy. But at the same time he certainly remembered the boy himself, blonde like this boy and probably the same age by this time. He had only seen him a few times, but from what he did see, the boy had been a kind and strong child, never hating anyone for what they had done to him. How had he become a killer like he now was? Who had turned him into such a fearsome devil? His mind flicked back to what the boy had stated earlier, that his name was Momochi Naruto, and his face paled. He knew that Naruto had been the name of the Kyuubi boy, but it had not been Momochi Naruto, but Uzumaki Naruto. There was only one person that he knew with that name, and it couldn't be a coincidence. Naruto had been taken in by the demon of the hidden mist, Momochi Zabuza. Though he hated the idea of harming his sensei's legacy, Kakashi began making hand signs. But however bad Sakura and Kakashi and the rest of them felt the killing intent of the nine-tailed fox, none of them were in as bad of a shape as the boy whom it was directed at. Sasuke's brain was going haywire. In all his life he had only felt worse once, and that was an experience that he did not often talk about. He could feel his body being torn apart by the sheer killing intent that pulled off of his foe. His blood was boiling and his skin was melting. It had to be. That was the only explanation for the horrible feeling that was encompassing him. After a moment he became aware that Naruto was speaking. You think yourself so great, and why? Because your daddy was great? Because your mommy was great? You are stupid. Strength does not come from blood or even fancy bloodlines. It comes from guts and willpower and experience and time and all of the other things that you don't have. Naruto paused for a moment and reached his hand up to the wrappings on his face and tore them off viciously, revealing fangs that had extended and sharpened to a deadly point. I have fought a lot of idiots like you, he continued, guys who thought that because they had a renowned name that made them invincible. I fought them and now every single one of them are dead. Some were strong, some not, but they all overestimated themselves. There is not a genin on earth, no matter what family they come from, that can defeat me. Come back when you have a bit more experience on your belt. Sasuke was barely listening, and yet somehow he understood every word. He was too frightened not to. He watched as Naruto took a single step forward, and then another. With each increasing step the affect on his body became worse. He was sweating and shaking and couldn't stand up no matter how hard he tried to get his limbs to respond. He felt his body hemorrhaging and his vision was becoming blurry from lack of blood to his brain. Then, all of a sudden an intense pain appeared in the center of his chest, so intense that it blocked all else out. Dimly he looked down. Piercing through the center of his chest was Naruto's katana. Naruto slowly shook his head, a drop of blood falling from his mouth and onto Sasuke's headband. His eyes flicked down to an arm that protruded from his chest, covered in his blood. For a fraction of a second he thought that he saw a few sparks of electricity fly out of his wound, but decided that it was just an illusion brought on from lack of blood to the brain. His eyes flicked to the right and he grinned painfully at the gray-haired Junin that had attacked him. He wasn't worried about the injury, it wouldn't last. What was much more worrying to his mind was his own actions of the last few moments. He looked down at the badly injured boy underneath him, his eyes glazing over, blood pouring down his mouth like a river. Naruto couldn't believe that he had done this. What had gotten into him? Why had he lost control? He had felt the power of the fox pulse into him when he was angry or scared before and tried to manipulate his actions, but he had never lost himself to it before. Why had he this time? Could it be that he really was becoming a demon? A wave of pain shot through him and he realized that the Junin was pulling his arm out of Naruto's chest. He coughed up more blood and felt his energy begin to leave him. Before he lost his connection he turned his head to focus on the Junin and mustering up as much strength as he could he spoke, Junin ninja. Cough, sorry about that. I wonder if I might know your name before I go? The gray-haired man showed no emotion but replied, Kakashi. Hitaki Kakashi is my name. Uzumaki-san. Naruto's eyes opened wide in shock, and he vanished in a puff of smoke. Miles away, in a simple square room, Momochi Naruto opened his eyes and stood up from his meditative stance. He felt a dull pain in his chest from where his clone had been attacked, but it was completely drowned out by the feeling of dread and shock that the Junin Kakashi had given him. And also by his own lack of control. His mind flicked back to the other times that the fox's power had reared its ugly head. The boosts had always been minimal. He had been a bit faster, a bit stronger, a bit angrier, that was for sure. But never had it been this extreme. He distinctly remembered the first time that it had ever happened. It had only been a year after Zabuza-sama had found him on the borders of the Fire Nation. He had been fighting a Cloud Nin with Haku. The ninja was only a genin and Haku was handling it pretty easily himself, until Naruto had slipped up and Haku had taken a kunai in his back to save him. Naruto had never been so furious before. His hair began to grow out, his fangs and nails had become pointed, and his whisker marks had become slightly thicker. Haku had later said that a light mist had also surrounded him. He had attacked the genin and nearly killed him. It hadn't taken Zabuza very long to figure out what Naruto was after that. For weeks after Naruto's body had ached. It was as though he had been caught in the middle of an avalanche. And even worse, it had become difficult for him to control his chakra afterwards. As though some sort of dam was blocking the flow. The aching had gone away, the chakra dam never had. He had eventually gotten used to it and improved his chakra control, but it had always made learning a new technique a pain since it was almost impossible for him to determine how much chakra to use. Every subsequent time he had been taken over by the fox's power, the aching had come back and the chakra block had gotten worse. The more power he used on, the worse it was. But he had never in his life felt anywhere near as much power as he had just now. And the strange thing was, he didn't ache. Nor was he dizzy or disoriented, and the chakra dam felt gone. What had happened? Also strange was the sheer amount of power that had overtaken him. He had been angry, furious even, at the arrogant Uchiha boy, true enough. But he had been far angrier in the past and had never gone out of control like that. He had barely been able to stop himself from landing a fatal blow at the last second. The Uchiha would be in bed for a while, but thankfully he would not die. He jumped to his feet and walked out the nearby door, intent on finding Zabuza-sama and asking him about it. He didn't have long to look. Haku was standing right outside his door. The older boy's fist was in the air, prepared to knock. "Oh, Naruto, you're up. Zabuza-sama wants to know if you have a report for him yet." Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I got the information about the enemy, and I also need his help on something." Haku smiled. "What is it? Maybe I can help." Naruto thought for a moment. He doubted that Haku would be able to help him with this, but at the same time he knew that the person who was like his brother would want to know about whatever might be bothering him. Slowly he recounted the tale, making sure to explain in detail what had happened with the 9 tails and why it bothered him so much. Haku shook his head. "I don't understand what happened, and I doubt that Zabuza-sama would either. You are a Jinchuriki and really not much is known about them because they are so rare. If I were you, I would try to talk to the fox and see what he knows." Naruto sighed. He had spoken to the fox a few times in the past, and in general it had always started and ended the same way. With the enormous creature trying futilely to kill him through the giant bars that contained him. "Fine," Naruto replied. "If Zabuza-sama doesn't know anything, then I will have a chat with the Kyuubi. But I would prefer if Zabuza could help me instead." Haku smiled sadly at him. "I know Otuto, I know." Kakashi sighed in exasperation. A moment ago he was terrified that he had been too late, that his student had been killed. Now he almost wished that had happened. Almost. At least it would be a lot less complicated that way. Amazingly, the katana had not seriously injured Sasuke. The blade had slipped through 2 of his ribs at just the right angle so that it missed his lungs, heart, esophagus, and any other vital organ. It had only cut through flesh and muscle. Sasuke had recovered from the side effects of the Kyuubi's chakra remarkably fast, and though he seemed to be in a decent bit of pain, he was quite adamantly refusing to turn back. Kakashi didn't want to go on to possibly have to deal with a famous and dangerous ninja like Zabuza with genin to deal with, much less an injured one. But Sasuke refused outright to turn back. He wanted to fight Naruto again, even if it killed him. He kept babbling about how that boy would be the next test of his power. Eventually Kakashi had given up trying to convince him and gone over to speak with Kurenai and Tazuna. "We have to turn back now," Kurenai stated, having also recognized the power of the 9 tails and the names Momochi and Naruto. Tazuna was not happy. He was now desperately trying to convince a pair of Junin, neither of whom wanted to continue. "I know that this isn't exactly what you signed up for, but I did pay in advance and you do have a responsibility to protect me at least until we get back to the Wave Country." Kakashi shook his head. "You mislead the Hokage as to what the mission entailed. Technically we would be within our rights to kill you ourselves right now." A bead of sweat rolled down Tazuna's forehead. "Listen, I'm sorry for what I did, but I couldn't afford a B or a ranked mission. If you knew my story, I'm sure that you would agree that I had no other choice. Kurenai's eyes narrowed. Well, we have plenty of time. Why don't you explain it to us? She spoke with a hint of ice in her voice that would have chilled even Kakashi's spine if it had been directed at him. Tazuna shook his head. There's no time. I have to get back to the wave country as soon as possible. Lives are at stake. Kurenai rolled her eyes. Lives are always at stake in the ninja world, Mr. Tazuna. If we took on a job for every sob story that couldn't pay that came along, we would be a bankrupt village. We're going back. Tazuna sighed. He only had one more card up his sleeve. If this didn't work, then nothing would. You're right, of course. I was in way over my head from the start. I'll just go on by myself. But since I am sure to die, can you please send a letter out to the wave country explaining what happened to my daughter and grandson? Sniff. All they have, and when I die they will probably end up on the streets, and my dearest daughter will have to resort to selling herself, and my grandkid will certainly have to become a petty thief. He took a dramatic sigh. But I'm sure if you explain to them that the village of Konoha just couldn't spare a few ninja to protect me because I couldn't pay, then they will feel much better about it. Kakashi looked exasperated. His visible eye was half closed and you could see his frown underneath his mask. In all his life he had never heard such a stupidly blatant attempt to guilt a Junin ninja like himself. He couldn't believe that this presumptuous man was actually trying to do something like this. He couldn't believe the look of expectancy on his face. He couldn't believe how incredibly corny that had just sounded. But what he really couldn't believe, that the guilty, corny, expectant speech was actually working. Sakura looked up as she heard the familiar footsteps of her sensei approaching. She had been doting over Sasuke ever since Kurenai had used her minimal knowledge of medical jutsu to stop his bleeding. The past actions had been very upsetting for her, and she was seriously hoping that they would be turning back. As soon as she saw the exasperated look on her sensei's face, she knew that she was going to be disappointed. In the background, Tazuna was grinning stupidly. Kurenai, on the other hand, was glaring at Kakashi's back so ferociously that the pink-haired genin was amazed that he wasn't dissolving where he stood. Sure enough, as the silver-haired Junin approached her, the first words that came out of his mouth were, "I've decided that we are going to continue the mission despite the danger." Sakura lowered her head, a look of worry on her face. "But Kakashi-sensei, we aren't ready for dangerous missions like this. And Sasuke needs medical attention. Shouldn't we turn back?" Kakashi shook his head. Despite Tazuna's disgusting attempt at guilt, Kakashi had other reasons of his own for wanting to go on. Sasuke is fine. His injury should be healed in a couple days with Kurenai's medical jutsu, and even without that it wouldn't be fatal. He really got lucky actually. The blade missed his lungs by less than a millimeter. Sakura shook her head. "But next time he might not be that lucky. What if we have to fight him again?" "Then I will be there to protect you." Kakashi replied, "Last time I was hoping that Sasuke could learn something by fighting an enemy so much stronger than himself. I won't make that mistake again." "But what if you can't help us?" asked the pink-haired girl. "What if he attacks when you aren't there? Or what if someone even stronger than him shows up?" Kakashi smiled behind his mask. Someone stronger than Naruto was exactly what he expected. Momochi Zabuza has been running from the Mist Tracker ninja for years. He was a known murderer and he had to be stopped. Kakashi knew that he might not get another chance like this. "Don't worry, Sakura, I won't let you get into a dangerous situation like this again." Naruto cursed under his breath. As Haku had predicted, Zabuza hadn't known anything about what had happened with the Nine Tails. He had been far more interested to hear the news of Sharingan Kakashi and the Six Genin. He had seemed basically unworried about the Kyuubi and, like Haku, had suggested that he talk to the fox about it. So that was exactly what he was going to do. Naruto reached his room, checked to make sure that no one else was around, and slipped inside. He walked over to the center of the room, sat down and crossed his legs. He focused his mental energies internally and slowly slipped into a trance-like state. When he opened his eyes, he was in the familiar sewer of his own mind. Naruto trudged through the grimy and wet sewer of his subconscious mind. He really hated this, going to talk with the Kyuubi. He didn't even know if the fox would tell him anything that would help, and if he did, well, Kyuubi was the last person he wanted to get help from anyways. It wasn't that he was afraid of the Nine Tails or anything, he just hated him. After all, it was the fox that was the source of all the suffering of his early life. He supposed that it wasn't really fair to blame the fox for that. It was the prejudiced villagers that gave him so much pain. Nonetheless, as he approached the familiar rusty bars that kept the demon at bay, he couldn't help but feel a slight tug of apprehension at his gut. But he had learned long ago that showing that in the fox's presence would not be wise. "Yo, rabbit ears," he called out, "you awake?" A deep rumbling in the back of the cavern signaled the movement of something huge. After a moment, two large and piercing, red eyes appeared from just behind the bars. "What do you want now, brat?" the Nine-Tails asked, his voice itself making the cavern shake. Naruto shook his head. Even after all these years, he still cringed at the feeling of malice that permeated the air whenever the demon spoke. "You know exactly what I want, rabbit ears." He spoke with a confidence that he didn't feel. "What the heck happened back a few minuets ago, back when I used your chakra? Why did so much of it surge into me? And why don't I feel like hell like I usually do after using your power?" The nine-tailed fox chuckled, creating a noise that seemed to cut through the air and into Naruto's soul. "Once again you show a pathetic understanding of what you really are. First of all, you do not use my chakra. I allow it to increase your strength, but it is I that use it." Naruto glared at the demon. He honestly didn't care what the fox thought about this. It wasn't why he was here. "As to what happened to you, I would think that painfully obvious even to a human like you, but I suppose I am just overestimating you. It all has to do with the seal that disgusting human used to seal me into your body so many years ago." Naruto frowned. "Stop beating around the bush, rabbit ears. If you know what happened, then tell me." The Kyuubi growled, "Don't call me that, brat. I do not have rabbit ears." The demon paused for a moment while Naruto smirked. "The seal that contains me was, when it was first created, divided into two parts. One of the two parts has simply dissolved, that's all. So there, you have your answer, now leave." Naruto blinked in shock. Dissolved? What did that mean? Could the Nine Tails break out of his seal? Was he in danger? What about Zabuza and Haku? Hold it, furry. You owe me a better explanation than that. What do you mean dissolved? The demon sighed. I suppose you aren't going to give me any peace until I explain it, will you? Very well. The original seal had two parts, one that was meant to be permanent and keep me sealed away, allowing a certain amount of my power to leak out into you whenever you or your comrades' lives were in danger. In other words, when you are under extreme emotional stress. The other part of the seal was meant to stop the power from leaking out and was designed to naturally dissolve as you grow. Naruto shook his head. I don't understand. The Kyuubi smirked. I wouldn't expect you to. You see, my power leaking out into you is meant to protect you if ever your life were in danger, but that same power is also extremely destructive. A human's chakra coils continue to develop until they are about the age of 16. A mere child could not hope to use my power without damaging themselves, and so the Hokage of Konoha placed a second seal on you that would stop you from using my power until your body could contain it. You are now at the age of 12, which he considered the time at which your chakra coils have advanced enough to safely use my chakra. Naruto was confused. But I've used your chakra before, idiot. If this temporary seal was supposed to protect me from your chakra, then why wasn't it doing its job? The demon grinned at Naruto, an effect that caused the boy to sweat slightly even though he was only a mental representation of himself and not actually real. You overpowered it, replied the fox. During the time when you believed your precious adopted brother seemed to die, your emotional trauma was such that you pulled my chakra straight through the seal, damaging it. Since then, the damaged seal has disrupted not only my own chakra but yours as well. Naruto rolled his eyes. I still don't understand, fox. The Kyuubi mimicked Naruto's rolling eyes. Think of it like this, brat. That seal is like a dam, blocking my chakra but letting your own through. But since you damaged it, it has been blocking parts of both of our chakra. This has also incidentally slowed down your learning curve quite a bit, since it has been extremely difficult for you to mold chakra. If not for the intense training of that Momochi human, you would have been pathetically weak after that. Unfortunately, those years of disrupted training can't be gotten back, but now that the seal has dissolved and both of our chakras are unblocked, you can continue learning at a much faster pace. Naruto nodded. Okay. I think I understand now. So then the aching feeling that I usually get after calling on your power is because my body wasn't strong enough to handle it yet? Kyuubi chuckled. I don't believe it. The brat actually got one right, and I didn't even have to explain it at all. Perhaps you are smarter than a 3-year-old. Indeed, though thankfully even damaged, the seal was able to hold back enough of my chakra so that you weren't permanently harmed. Naruto grinned. Thankfully? I didn't know you cared, Fuzzbutt. The fox growled, don't get whelp, and don't forget that if you die then so do I. Sasuke was annoyed. He walked down the path that led to the land of waves. He had only been half paying attention to the old man talking about how his land was bankrupt, about how some tycoon named Gato was trying to kill him for building a bridge that could be the last hope to save his home, about how the ninjas that attacked them were assassins and that there would probably be more coming before the bridge was done. He really didn't care. All he cared about at the moment was finding that demonic blonde-haired boy and fighting him again. That was why he was walking in front, trying to speed the others up, so that they would reach their destination as soon as possible and Kakashi would be able to train him. He would become much stronger and then, the next time they met up with Momochi Naruto, he would be the victor. Well, it wasn't exactly true that he was in front. Kiba, the damn annoying Inuzuka, was doing his best to try and take the lead from him. He couldn't let that happen of course, so every time the Inuzuka passed him he would increase his walking speed. It wasn't long before the two of them were much farther up than the rest of the team. And as such it was no surprise that none of the other Konoha ninja heard when both of them were attacked from behind, taken out before they could even call for help. Sakura was worried. She had ran up a few feet ahead after she had lost sight of Sasuke-kun and Kiba-kun, but she couldn't find them again. She took one last look around to make sure she hadn't missed anything and turned back to the Junin. Did you find them? Asked Kakashi as she approached. Sakura shook her head. No, I don't know what happened to them. They seem to have disappeared. Kakashi shook his head. I don't like this, Kurenai. The female Junin turned her attention to him. You stay here with the genin and Tazuna. I'm going to go and see if I can find Kiba and Sasuke. Kurenai nodded and Kakashi turned and jumped off through the trees. Zabuza was angry. When Naruto had told him that the famous Sharingan Kakashi was with the old man, he had been angry that he had been placed into a position where his two prize students might be in danger. He had no doubt that he could take on Kakashi and win, but if Naruto or Haku was forced to fight without him, then he wasn't sure what would happen to them. He was also angry when Naruto had told him about the strange recent effects of the Kyuubi's power. Odds were everything would be fine. From Naruto's description it didn't sound like anything dangerous, but he hated not knowing for sure and he hated not being able to do anything to help his student. Finally, he was angry that Gato had been so difficult to reason with. The man practically wanted something for nothing. He was not going to put his prize pupils' lives in unnecessary danger for nothing, and Gato had taken so long in negotiations that he had missed his chance to meet his enemies himself and take the element of surprise. Now Naruto had mentioned his name, and for someone like Kakashi he was sure that it was recognized. He wasn't angry with Naruto, but he was angry that he hadn't been there himself to oversee things. One of the two unconscious genin that were slung over his shoulder twitched and he roughly jabbed him in the gut. He had been surprised to find that two of the kids had wandered off on their own, but never one to look a gift horse in the mouth. He had quickly knocked them out and taken them into the trees. He smiled for the first time that day as he saw the famed Hitaki Kakashi appear in the distance. He watched as Kakashi passed by the tree that he was hiding in and them stop. Kakashi tilted his head back and spoke. I know that you're up there, and I know that you have Sasuke and Kiba. Now come down where I can see you. Zabuza smirked and hopped down, making sure that the Sharingan user could see the two unconscious forms of his genin teammates slung over his shoulders. Just as I would expect from someone of your reputation, Hitaki-san. Kakashi glared at him. Momochi Zabuza, I've heard a lot about you as well. I don't suppose you might mind giving me my student and his teammate back. Zabuza turned his head back in the direction that the rest of the Konoha ninja were and then tossed Sasuke onto the ground, grabbed his famed guillotine sword and positioned its tip as Sasuke's throat. Kakashi tensed up, but Zabuza didn't move more than that. I have to say, Hitaki, I really don't give a damn whether this kid lived or dies here today. As I'm sure you know, my target is the bridge builder. So I'm proposing a trade, him for the two of these brats. Kakashi frowned. Are you sure that you're Momochi Zabuza? He asked. What are you talking about? Asked Zabuza in an incredulous voice. Kakashi shrugged. Well, from what I have read about Momochi Zabuza, he wouldn't be wasting time making deals. He would try to kill us all just for the sake of killing us and then take the bridge builder. Zabuza frowned. That certainly did sound like him. When it came right down to it, it was a surprise that these two kids were even still alive. He slowly shook his head. I don't have to explain myself to you, Hitaki. Kakashi tilted his head away, as though in indifference. Whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Zabuza was about to respond when he heard a familiar sound heading toward him from behind. Faster than the normal human eye could perceive, the swordsman twisted around and knocked the approaching kunai out of the air with his blade. The second Junin and the rest of the genin had arrived. "Kurenai," spoke Kakashi, "I thought that I told you to wait with Tazuna." The other Junin nodded and smirked. "Yeah, but apparently Shino attached a bug to you before you left, and when it came back with a message that you were in danger, I thought it best that we come and help you." Zabuza scowled in annoyance. "It doesn't matter. Are you going to hand over the bridge builder or not?" Zabuza's eyes flicked down to the comatose genin and a look of shock appeared on his face. The boy was gone. He looked to the other one still slung over his shoulder only to see that the Inuzuka had been replaced with a lumpy sack of what he could only assume was sand. Zabuza's eyes flicked left and right for a moment, but then the obvious answer hit him and he smiled evilly. "Not a bad genjutsu," he spoke, "but not clever enough to trick me." Zabuza pulled his sword into the air and made a motion as if to swing it down. A look of fear appeared on Kakashi's face and he took a step forward, lowering his guard for a half of a second as he did so. With unbelievable speed, Momochi Zabuza charged the silver-haired Junin and slashed his sword at his enemy's waist. Somewhat surprised, Kakashi was only just able to get a kunai into each hand and cross them into the path of the blade. Unfortunately, this left him with nothing to defend from Zabuza's fist, which slammed so hard into his chest that, if not for the protective Junin vest, it would have surely shattered his ribs. Kakashi went flying into a nearby tree and Zabuza smiled at his momentary victory. He had not long to celebrate though, as immediately Kurenai was behind him, a kunai positioned at his neck. Zabuza just kept smiling. Hinata rushed to the side of her fallen teammates, who had reappeared as soon as Kurenai had stopped focusing on the genjutsu, and placed her hand on the side of Kiba's head, checking for a pulse. She couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she found him unconscious but unharmed. Although she had only known him for a short while, Hinata had found herself strangely drawn to the rough and ragged dog ninja. He seemed to be a complete contradiction to everything she had ever known growing up. He was brash, reckless, didn't seem to give a darn about things like manners and social status, and best of all, he seemed to like her unconditionally. In all her life she had always felt as though she needed to earn affection from the people around her, but this simple boy, though he could often be crude and harsh, he didn't think any less of her for what she was. She had never met someone like him before and she was certainly not going to lose him now. Gently she nudged his shoulder and rubbed his head in an attempt to wake him. Meanwhile, Satsu had lumbered up to the side of Uchiha Sasuke. The cruel boy smirked at the prone figure. It amused him to no end to see the same arrogant and proud Uchiha reduced to a completely helpless state. Any idiot could walk up with a knife right now and slit his neck and no stinkin' bloodline was going to save him. Satsu turned his eyes to where Hinata was attempting to kindly wake up the Inuzuka and smirked. He decided he was going to try a more direct approach. And so he swung his foot back and with as much force as he could muster, slammed it into the Uchiha's gut. The effect was immediate. Sasuke's eyes opened wide and he began coughing violently. A small splatter of blood appeared out of his mouth. Once he had recovered enough, he turned to glare angrily at his attacker who was laughing cruelly at the other boy's pain. "Come on, Uchiha-san," Kurenai said. "All the genin have to protect the old sardine while she and the Cyclops fight that sword jerk. So no laying down on the job now." The three battling Junin were standing in the middle of the lake. Kakashi was panting slightly, his injured rib cage making breathing far more difficult than it should be. Kurenai's nose was bleeding, most likely broken from when Zabuza had elbowed her a moment ago. Zabuza himself seemed unharmed. Kurenai attacked first, creating a genjutsu that made it seem as though vines were growing out of the ground to attack the mist swordsman. Zabuza jumped into the air and threw a pair of shuriken at the genjutsu user, who effortlessly deflected them. However, as she did so, the vines stopped moving for a split second, letting Zabuza know that they weren't real. He fell back to the water, slashing through vines as he went. Although he knew that the vines were illusions, he also knew that the effect that they had on his mind could harm him. As he landed and more vines shot up from under the water, he quickly re-slung his sword over his back and made a strange, unique hand seal. "Kirigakure no jutsu," he whispered. In an instant the entire battlefield was covered in an impenetrable mist. No longer able to direct her genjutsu, Kurenai cursed and jumped back onto the dry land, allowing her illusion to dispel itself. Zabuza dashed through the mist, making hardly any sound on the water's surface. He felt a strong wave of chakra, obviously the efforts of Hitaki Kakashi to disperse the thick mist, not that it mattered. Kakashi twisted his head around as the fog disappeared, searching for his enemy, but Zabuza seemed to have vanished along with his mist. Then a high-pitched scream cut through the air and Kakashi turned his head, almost in panic, to where the 6 genin had regrouped around Tazuna. There stood Zabuza, in the very center, his sword held high above his head, more than ready to slice the bridge builder in half. And Kakashi knew that he would never be able to make it in time to stop him. The muscles in Zabuza's arm and shoulder shifted and flexed, preparing to swing his enormous blade downward onto his quarry. He knew that Sharingan Kakashi was too far away to do anything, and he had taken down the other Junin in the mist. The 6 genin surrounded him, but they were too stunned and too slow to possibly do anything about it. Tazuna himself was completely untrained, and so his eyes had probably not even registered Zabuza was there yet, and even if he had, he would never be able to dodge a ninja's attack. There was nothing to stop him from slicing this man in two and leaving to collect his pay. The only thing that he didn't expect was for Tazuna to be roughly yanked back by an invisible force that sent him sprawling onto his back. Zabuza blinked in surprise when his blade found only air and stared in confusion at the spot on the ground where the bridge builder had stood a moment ago. His moment of hesitation was all it took for Kakashi to slam his fist into the swordsman's face, knocking him back toward the lake. A stunned Tazuna rolled onto his side, revealing a small swarm of at least 100 insects attached to his back. Although it was impossible to see under his unusual clothes, Aburame Shino was proudly smiling at his triumph. Zabuza stood atop the water of the lake, staring down his adversary. To his annoyance, Kakashi had succeeded in raising his ninja headband, revealing his famed Sharingan eye. But it didn't matter, he was certain that he could beat this Konoha nin either way. The genin were in shambles. Hinata had panicked when she saw her sensei laying unconscious at the lake's edge and had ran over to her. Kiba was trying to convince her to come back, telling her that Kurenai would be alright and that the most important thing now was to protect the client. Satsu simply looked amused at the chaos around him and didn't seem very intent on protecting the bridge builder. Sakura was shaking slightly, but to her credit she stood her ground. Shino, the only one acting like a true ninja should, was trying his best to protect Tazuna, though he knew that if Zabuza attacked again there would be nothing he could do. The same trick would not work twice against a Junin. Sasuke had completely forgotten about the mission and was watching the battle between the two ninja with awe. Sasuke had never thought that he would see another Sharingan, outside of himself and his adversary, and yet the red eye with the 3 tomo was unmistakable. He couldn't help but wonder if Kakashi might have some connection to the Uchiha that he didn't know about. If so, the silver-haired Junin might be more useful than he had originally thought. Kakashi's taijutsu skills seemed to have made an enormous leap due to the power of the Sharingan, and Zabuza was becoming annoyed. He didn't seem to be able to get a hit in. But it didn't matter, if taijutsu wouldn't work then something different must be tried. Zabuza jumped backwards as shifted through a few hand signs. Sweden. Water boomerang jutsu. A 2-foot-long blade of water appeared in Zabuza's hand, curved like a crescent moon, which he flung at his opponent. Kakashi jumped as the blade approached and it passed harmlessly beneath him. Kakashi moved to retaliate when he heard the whistle of a blade behind him, and quickly twisted and sliced through the water blade with one of his kunai. The blade had turned in midair just like the boomerang that was its namesake. Zabuza smirked as he jumped into the air above his foe and created more hand signs. Sweden. 1000 water boomerang jutsu. Kakashi's eyes opened wide in shock as hundreds of water blades shot toward him, some flying straight downward, others curving to attack him from the sides or even behind. Kakashi's mind worked in overtime, and yet he could think of only one way to dodge these blades. He knew that in doing so he would seal his fate, but he had no other choice, and so he cut off the flow of chakra to his feet and sunk beneath the water. Zabuza wasted no time, flicking through a short list of hand signs and calling out, Sweden. Suiru no Jutsu. In less than a moment Kakashi was trapped within an orb of water. The genin, sans Satsu, couldn't help but feel their hearts gripped by fear. Sasuke in particular was disappointed at his teacher's failure. Satsu grinned and shambled up to the lake's edge, clearly unafraid of the powerful being in front of him. "I gotta say," he shouted out, "I've seen Kakashi fight before, and for anyone to stop him so easily. Well, you must be one strong ninja." From inside the dome of water Kakashi spoke, "Satsu, leave here. This man will kill you, all of you. The objective is to protect the bridge builder. Nothing else matters. Now take Kurenai and the client and leave." Satsu completely ignored his sensei, continuing to speak to the demon of the hidden mist. "I personally don't have any interest in being taught by pathetic people. After you slit the old K's throat, how about you train me instead?" Zabuza's eyes betrayed a touch of shock at Satsu's words. Kakashi looked astounded. Most of the genin had a look of either betrayal or simply anger on their faces. The missing nin seemed to think for a moment and then his eyes narrowed. "I have no use for students who turn against their sensei the moment they find a better one." Satsu shrugged and began circling the lake. "But surely there can be no better sensei than you, so what have you to worry about?" Zabuza turned his head to follow Satsu's movement. "Even if that were true, it wouldn't be the point," he replied. "You clearly can't be trusted, and I don't teach people who have no respect or loyalty. Besides that, you aren't good enough to be my student." Satsu grinned. "And how do you know that? Maybe I'm better than that blonde nerd that you sent after us before." Zabuza glared. "You are stalling for time, it won't work." Satsu chuckled. "I'm not stalling for time. I'm looking for this." With surprising speed, Satsu dashed out onto the lake, a kunai in either hand. Zabuza was shocked. A genin this new shouldn't be able to walk on water yet. What were this boy's secrets? Satsu jumped just before he reached the swordsman and swung his kunai down, only to have it effortlessly deflected by a one-handed swing from Zabuza's sword. The force of the blow sent Satsu flying into the air, but grinning, he dropped his kunai to reveal a pair of shuriken concealed beneath them. "Jerks!" he yelled out while simultaneously throwing his weapons downward. "Attack now!" Sasuke and Shino realized what Satsu was doing immediately and each pulled a pair of kunai and threw them at the enemy. Sakura and Kiba quickly caught on and followed suit. Zabuza turned his head to register each of the approaching blades. 2 from above and 4 from the side, followed immediately by 4 more from the side. Suddenly he realized why the genin brat had been circling the lake. The angle that his blades now came from made it impossible to deflect both his shuriken and the other genin's kunai with only one hand. He couldn't help but be impressed with the genin's resourcefulness. But it wouldn't be enough. Zabuza jumped, creating a perfect arc over the water dome, and landed on the other side. Each of the blades passed harmlessly where he had been a moment before. Satsu cursed terribly as he landed. Zabuza dashed with insane speed in a circle around the water dome and slammed his fist into the partially landed genin's stomach. Satsu flew across the lake and vanished in a puff of smoke. A moment later, one of his discarded kunai that had floated on the surface of the water shimmered and grew, transforming into the genin who slashed with his own real kunai at Zabuza's arm. But it was for naught. Faster than Satsu's eyes could see, Zabuza's foot leashed out and slammed the real Satsu across the lake. Zabuza chuckled. "That wasn't a bad plan, kid, but you don't really think that I wouldn't notice that floating kunai? Metal doesn't usually float like that." Satsu just grinned as he gingerly raised himself from the ground. "Well gee, I guess you outsmarted me, huh?" Suddenly an explosion tore out from Zabuza's feet, forcing the Junin to jump backwards and release his hold on Kakashi's water prison. Satsu grinned as he replayed his entire plan in his mind. After being rejected, no one had to know that his offer was a legitimate one. He had circled the lake until he was at the optimum angle so that Zabuza wouldn't be able to block all the attacks at once and dashed at him across the water. One of the many aces that he had up his sleeve that even the Konoha instructors didn't know about. He had attacked in a way that would cause Zabuza to push him into the air and then discarded his kunai and tossed his remaining shuriken blades at Zabuza, calling for his teammates to do the same. While Zabuza's eyes were turned for a split second to register the blades coming from the genin on the land, he created a bunshin and hanged himself into a kunai, pretending to be one of the ones that he had discarded into the lake. When Zabuza predictably dodged the blades and turned back to attack the bunshin, Satsu released his henge and attacked Zabuza's arm. Zabuza had of course seen through his ruse and quickly attacked the genin, but in his speed he hadn't seen Satsu's true purpose. The exploding tag that he had attached to his stomach and that had transferred to the bottom of Zabuza's foot when he kicked the genin. It had all worked perfectly, and now the Junin Kakashi was free. Kakashi smiled as he locked one of his kunai blades with Zabuza's sword. "That was a remarkable plan for a genin satsu," he said. "I admit I was worried when you requested Zabuza to be your sensei. But when this is over we are going to have a long talk about where exactly you learned water walking." Satsu rolled his eyes. "Sure, whatever you say, K-man," he replied before running back to the rest of the genin. Sasuke smirked at him. "That was pretty impressive, Rokuju. Maybe you aren't completely useless after all." Satsu smirked right back. "I'll tell you a secret, Uchiha. I threw the final exams to make sure that I was the lowest score in class. I wanted to be paired with the Rookie of the Year so that I wouldn't have such useless teammates." He seemed to think for a moment and then added, "Oh, and also because I knew that your angsty butt would be Rookie of the Year and you were just so stinkin' fun to torment." His smirk morphed into a sadistic grin. Sakura glared at him. "You jerk, don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that." Satsu turned his eyes to her and glared. A surprising amount of killing intent was released for only half a moment before Satsu composed himself. But Sakura had felt it and it sent a shiver up her spine. "Don't forget Banshee," he replied, "you aren't as valuable to me. Be careful you don't one day wake up to find a knife at your little throat. 'Cause I sure as heck ain't gonna save your fat tush." Zabuza glared down his enemy, somewhat shaken by the genin's success but unharmed and ready to fight. Kakashi seemed unaffected by his glare, his Sharingan simply staring right back into Zabuza's eyes. After a moment of locked blades, the two ninja pushed back against each other and flew back, landing only a few feet away from each other on the water. Both quickly started making hand signs. It took a moment for Zabuza to realize that Kakashi's hand signs were identical to his own, but when he did his eyes narrowed in angered suspicion. After a moment they each, in perfect synchronization, called out, "Suiryuden no Jutsu." Two large snake-like water dragons rose out of the lake, circling each other for a moment before striking at each other, each latching onto the other's neck. Zabuza's face betrayed no emotion, but he couldn't help but be shocked at the speed of the Sharingan. He could have sworn that their hand signs were coming at the same time. How could Kakashi have copied his movements fast enough to use the technique at the exact same moment that he himself had? Suddenly and without warning, the dragons were no longer equal. Kakashi's creation grew to an extreme size, easily dwarfing the opposing dragon. Totally shocked, Zabuza lost his concentration on his own dragon and the water creature dissolved, allowing the larger dragon to strike at him. The water slammed into him and sent him flying into the trees near the lake. Zabuza slowly shook his head to clear his mind from its recent pounding and then felt a burning pain in his arms and side. 4 kunai pinned him to the tree that he had rested against. Immediately Kakashi and Kurenai appeared on the branches above, the female Junin clutching her head as though she had some sort of migraine. Suddenly it was all clear and Zabuza began to laugh. The water dragon growing was only a genjutsu. He had been tricked. Well, that was some impressive Sharingan manipulation, Kakashi. I assume you had hypnotized me to use an attack that you had already copied some time ago in an attempt to scare me? Kakashi shrugged. Did it work? He asked lazily. Zabuza laughed in response. You might say that. Alright, I admit defeat this time, but I warn you, that bridge builder will die. If not by my hind, then by the hands of my stewed huh. Kakashi blinked in shock as 2 needles appeared in Zabuza's neck, causing the Junin to keel over, his eyes still open but unmoving. The 2 Konoha Junin turned to a new figure in a white mask, who was looking over the prone figure of the ex-mist ninja with an aura of contempt. After a moment of stunned silence, Kakashi jumped down from his perch and placed his fingers to Zabuza's neck. He's dead, announced the silver-haired Junin. The new figure nodded. Yes, and I thank you for distracting him long enough to give me an opening to do that. I am a hunter ninja that has been sent from the village hidden in the mist to capture this fugitive. Kakashi nodded in understanding. I see, and I suppose now you are going to destroy the body so as to prevent the secrets of your village from getting out? The hunter nodded. Yes, I need to take the body away now to dispose of it safely. Kakashi turned to the dead Junin and shook his head. His eyes held a slight glimpse of suspicion. Dispose of it here, he replied. I would like for my students to see this. It will be a good experience for their training. From behind the mask Haku began to sweat, trying to think of a reason as to why he couldn't do his supposed job right here and now. Thankfully Haku had always been a quick thinker. Unfortunately no, he replied coolly, my methods are in and of themselves a village secret. I cannot have any of you witness it. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, his suspicion deepening. However, he could think of no way that he could question the hunter further without accusing him of treachery, and if he were mistaken that could lead to complications with the Mist Village. For now he had to let the hunter go. Very well. Take him away if you must. We will continue to escort our charge to his intended destination. Haku nodded and grabbed onto Zabuza before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Naruto paced back and forth, his face contorted in rage. Every few seconds he would kick at something, usually destroying whatever it was in the process. Haku sat on the ground in the corner of his room, a cup of tea in his hand and a patient look on his face as he waited out Naruto's tantrum. I should have been there. The blonde-haired boy yelled in fury. I should have been there taking care of the damn genin. Why the hell didn't you wake me up? I could have stopped this. Haku sighed and placed his teacup on a nearby table, the only one that hadn't been smashed by Naruto's rage. Naruto, Zabuza-sensei decided not to wake you up because he thought that you needed your talk with the fox. Naruto grabbed a chair and threw it at the wall, shattering it. It doesn't matter. He yelled, I don't care what it means to me. Zabuza-sensei's business comes first, and yours. He seemed to calm down slightly, though he was still fuming. Haku raised to his feet and walked over to his foster brother. Naruto, you shouldn't feel bad about this, it was no fault of yours that this happened. He smiled and placed his hand on Naruto's. The blonde boy shrugged it off. Haku sighed, you know it isn't as though we have failed yet. Zabuza-sama will recover and we will try again. You will have your chance to aid then. Naruto dipped his head in defeat. Yeah, whatever. He answered before turning to the door. A moment before he walked out, Haku spoke again in a cautious voice. Where are you going? Naruto turned his head to look at Haku's face. He recognized the doubt and worry in his face. Haku knew him far too well. Why do you want to know? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Just promise me you won't do anything rash. Okay, Otuto. Haku spoke slowly and deliberately. Naruto grinned, don't worry Haku, I just want to make a few new friends. He walked out the door and closed it behind him. Kakashi, Kurenai and their team sat with Tazuna and his family, his daughter and grandson, a kind and simple lady named Tsunami and a quiet boy named Inari. Kiba wasn't sure what he thought of the boy, who hadn't said a word since they had arrived but whom seemed to be glaring at them from under his hat. The adults were talking about something political or economic or something along those lines, things that Kiba didn't really have any care for. As best he understood it, this Gato creep had majorly screwed over the Land of Waves and they were supposed to take him out. That was all he needed to know. The dog ninja turned back to Inari and, noticing that the boy was still glaring at him, began to glare back. Well, turnabout was fair game after all. Inari simply glared harder, which of course led to Kiba glaring harder, and back and forth until something had to happen. Kiba was the one who bursted first. All right y'all little pipsqueak, he yelled out. Every head in the room turned to stare at Kiba's sudden outbreak. The dog ninja ignored them. Who the heck do you think you're glaring at? I'd have thought that you'd be grateful considering we just saved your granddaddy's ass. Inari stood up, tears running down his face. Kiba was slightly taken aback. He was annoyed but he didn't mean to make the kid cry. Inari opened his mouth as if to speak and then closed it again. His eyes shifted to each of the ninja in turn and then to his grandfather and mother, and finally back to Kiba. He opened and closed his mouth a few more times, thinking of the right words to express what he wanted to say, before he finally spoke. You don't get it, do you? All you so-called ninja, none of you understand. He turned and ran to the doorway that led to his room. A moment before he reached it he stopped. You are all going to die. There is no way you can win against Gato. If you don't want to die then you should just leave. And he left. Kiba snorted, who does that brat think he is? There's no way some catman is going to stop me. I'll take anything this Gato throws at me. Kakashi smiled behind his mask. I'm glad you feel that way Kiba, because odds are very good that Momochi Zabuza is still very much alive. Kiba fell off his chair and onto his face. Kakashi and Kurenai walked side by side through the woods, their 6 genin students following a few feet behind. A hunter ninja, Kurenai explained, is not supposed to wait for anything. Once their target has been terminated, they are meant to destroy the body immediately. This ninja did not do that. But Kurenai's sensei, Sakura asked, didn't the hunter ninja explain that his methods were secrets of his village? Kakashi answered, that is extremely unlikely. The hunter nin only needed to destroy the body, and a simple fire would have sufficed for that. It is possible that he needed to retrieve something from Zabuza's body before destroying it, but if so, why did he state such an obvious lie? Kurenai spoke again, we must also consider the weapon used to kill Zabuza, simple senbon needles. Useful weapons for a variety of purposes, but unless a major vital organ was struck, such as the heart, they would not be fatal, and even then the death would not have been instantaneous as it seemed to be. Shino nodded, however it would have been easy for someone who is both a master acupuncturist and a skilled ninja to use those needles to stimulate a death-like state. Kiba gave him an odd look, since when are you so knowledgeable? He asked. Shino shrugged, acupuncture is one of the methods that my clan uses to prepare our bodies for our insects. Kakashi nodded, Shino is correct. Considering both of these facts, both Kurenai and I both agree that the hunter nin's true purpose was not to kill Momochi Zabuza, but to save him. Kurenai nodded in agreement. It is even possible that the hunter nin was the same blonde-haired boy from before in disguise. Sasuke spoke up, so then what are we supposed to do? He asked. You and Kurenai should be able to stop him again. This shouldn't be a problem. Kakashi shook his head. Even if we were to be able to defeat Zabuza a second time, we don't know the strength of Naruto, and we also don't know who else he might have aiding him. Kiba grinned, sounds great. I've been aching for a good brawl. Kurenai smiled, which is why we are going to be training out here, until Zabuza returns. Satsu, who had simply been staring out at the birds, finally drew his attention to the matter at hand. What sort of training you got in mind? Kakashi smiled, considering what you did back at the lake, I don't think that you need this. What we are going to be doing is climbing a tree. Sakura stood in front of her tree with a slight glare on her face. Her mind had wandered back to her unsavory teammate Satsu. While Kakashi-sensei had been explaining the tree climbing exercise, the jerk had calmly walked up to the tip of the tallest tree, walking backwards. She remembered how he had threatened her after he had tricked Zabuza, and she remembered how he had seemed so excited at the thought of Sasuke being killed by Naruto, and her anger grew. Hey Pinky, she heard him call out from above, hope this isn't too difficult for ya. I'd hate to think that my teammate is so pathetic she can't even climb a simple tree. Sakura gritted her teeth, took a step back, and charged at the tree. She grinned as she felt herself rising up off the ground. 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, and fell. Sakura frowned as she heard Satsu's cackling laughter. She could hear him yell out, pathetic, and useless. Furious, she dashed up the tree again, and this time made it up an even shorter distance before falling. She couldn't think straight. All she could see when she closed her eyes was Satsu's cruel and disgusting face. All she could hear was Satsu's laughter and callous words. She couldn't concentrate, she couldn't focus. She felt weak, useless, it was a horrible feeling. Angrily she dashed up the tree again, this time barely making it 5 feet off the ground before losing her grip. She closed her eyes and braced herself for the impact, but it never had caught her wrist, preventing her fall. Sakura slowly opened her eyes, half expecting to see Kakashi-sensei, or even Sasuke. She was sure that this exercise would be easy for him. What she never expected to see was the blonde-haired boy from before, Naruto, to be standing above her, a kind smile on his face. She blinked in surprise and slowly looked around the rest of the clearing. No one else was watching. Satsu had switched his attention to Hinata, who was nearly in tears both due to her inability to stick her feet to the tree and Satsu's cruel words. Kurenai and Kakashi were attempting to comfort her and at the same time find a way to motivate her. Sasuke was totally wrapped up in his own exercise. Shino and Kiba were competing to see who could reach the top of the tree first. She flicked her eyes back to Naruto. She wanted to call out, to alert Kakashi-sensei or Kurenai-sensei. She tried to yell, but her voice caught in her throat. As though he could read her mind, he lifted his free hand to his mouth and pressed his finger to his lips, miming shushing her, and winked. Winked? Why would he do that? He was the enemy, right? What was it that he wanted? She wanted to ask him. She wanted to understand him, but she just didn't seem to be able to. Naruto flicked his eyes around the field and then back to Sakura. He grinned. She titled her head to the side. Why was he acting so nice? This didn't make any sense. Finally she found her voice. What are you doing here? She asked. Her voice barely above a whisper, as though she was doing something taboo. She supposed she was in a way. He spoke in the same whispering voice. You have a lot of talent. You just need to stop letting him get to you. Your anger is inhibiting you. You need to be able to concentrate on what you are doing. You can make it up this tree, you know you can. She blinked, her eyes full of doubt. He gave her a patient smile. Would you trust me with something as simple as not letting you fall? He asked. She was floored. He was asking her if she could trust him. She should be alerting Kakashi. He should be trying to kill her, not help her. This was wrong. This picture just didn't add up. Why hadn't she called out yet? What was stopping her? What was wrong with her? And why in hell was her face so hot? She realized to her absolute horror that she had already nodded. He smiled and began walking backwards. She walked with him up the tree. Her feet connected to the wood, not slipping, not stumbling. She was doing it. Somehow, he had given her the confidence to do it. They reached one of the top branches and he gently lifted her onto it. Her chest was heaving. This was unnatural. She couldn't be doing this. Why wasn't she calling out? What was wrong with her? He spoke again. You see? You can do it, just like I said. Her eyes flicked to his, questions gleaming in their jade depths. He smiled as he picked up on what she was wondering. I didn't help you at all. I was only there, just in case. You walked up the tree all on your own. His eyes shot to where Satsu was sitting, smug as a peacock, on a tree branch of similar height to the one they were on. Now I hope you won't be too upset if I excuse myself for a moment. I did come here for a reason. Her eyes opened wide in shock as she saw his hand settle on the handle of his katana. Before she could say anything he kicked off from the branch, flying at an insane speed toward her teammate. She opened her mouth to call out a warning, but even if she had enough time to say anything she wasn't sure she would have been able to. It quickly became pandemonium. Naruto had been stopped before he ever reached Satsu. Kakashi had caught him in midair. The Junin's fist slammed into the boy's gut. Immediately Naruto vanished in a puff of smoke and a second Naruto flew towards Satsu from a different direction. This time the blade found its mark, the branch that Satsu rested on. He sliced clean through it, sending the genin bully sprawling to the ground. The second Naruto was quickly taken out by a kunai that flew from the hand of a shocked-looking Kakashi. This one also disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi twisted his head around, searching for where the real boy was. Show yourself, he called out, his normally lackadaisical voice suddenly alert. At the Junin's words, a third Naruto appeared from the shadows. Don't give yourself a heart attack, Kakashi-san. He said, I'm not actually here. Just a few of my clones. You don't think I'd be dumb enough to actually walk into an enemy camp myself, do you? Kakashi pulled out a pair of kunai. Naruto shook his head. I don't have any intention of fighting you. I just figured that if you wouldn't talk to me like I asked last time, then I would just watch you for a while. Kakashi glared at him. You think that we would let you do that? Naruto grinned and shrugged. Try and stop me if you want. Though that would seem to be a pretty big disruption when you could be spending time helping your students. I can just keep sending clones for as long as I want. Kakashi continued to glare at the blonde boy, but before he could reply, a brown streak dashed up to Naruto. Before anyone could react, Naruto backhanded the attacking Satsu into a nearby tree. The tension in the air could be cut with a knife. Sakura was holding her breath, as were Shino and Kiba. Kakashi and Kurenai looked ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Sasuke was glaring at Naruto with a hatred so intense that his eyes nearly burned red. Naruto slowly turned his head to look at the downed Satsu. I did want to talk to you. He said, I hear that you were able to get one over on my sensei yesterday. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't actually think that you were in any way better than him. He smiled pleasantly, as though he were speaking to a close friend. After all, even a mouse can get lucky against a tiger once in a while. Satsu smiled a cheesy smile at him and nodded. Of course, Naruto-san, but I couldn't just let my own beloved sensei die, could I? I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. A trickle of sweat ran down Satsu's forehead. Naruto rolled his eyes. He had never heard such a lousy pile of crap in his life. The genin was obviously terrified and desperate to save his own ass. But he could play along too. Okay, good, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. And just to make sure you don't forget. Naruto nudged his foot under Satsu's prone figure and with a lightning fast movement he flipped him into the air, before slamming his knee into the boy's gut. Satsu didn't even have the eyes to see exactly what Naruto had done. All he registered was a sudden searing pain in his gut before his body slammed into a tree, transforming said tree into splinters. He twisted his head up, his vision shrouded with pain-induced tears. His head was ringing, but that didn't stop his from hearing Naruto's voice quite clearly as he spoke with the tiniest lacing of fury. Just so you know, Zabuza-sama is 10 times stronger than I am. And I am 10 times stronger than you. His voice was suddenly jovial again, so don't be getting a big head, alright? Sakura was hyperventilating. She didn't understand this boy at all. His very presence seemed to make her emotions shift faster than a ninja using a henge. First she was terrified, then a moment later she was grateful and fascinated. When he attacked Satsu, she had felt a strange mixture of worry and excitement. Not worry for Satsu, that jerk could go to hell as far as she was concerned. She shocked herself when she found that she was worried that Kakashi-sensei would kill Naruto. When the first clone had been hit she had blanched. She had let out a sigh of relief when he had proven to be alright. Sasuke's thoughts were much more organized. He felt a blind fury at this presumptuous boy who thought himself so much better than them. In the back of his head he knew that the real reason he was angry was because Naruto had humiliated him and had spoken of something that he had tried so hard to suppress, but in his rage he couldn't bring himself to think logically. He needed to beat this boy, and prove to himself and everyone else that he, as an Uchiha, has superior to this punk. The punk in question turned his head to smile at Sasuke, though behind his smile he had another, undecipherable look. I also wanted to apologize to you, Uchiha-san. Sometimes I have a bit of a problem with my temper, but that is no excuse to nearly kill you like I did. I will save that, for I am on the job and have no other choice. Sasuke's eye began twitching. This guy was patronizing him. He had never been quite so furious in his entire life. He attacked. Sasuke propelled himself off of the branch of the tree he had been standing in, much in the same way Naruto had done when he had attacked Satsu, and drew a pair of kunai. Kakashi and Kurenai realized what was about to happen a moment before it did, but were too far away to do anything about it. Naruto's sword was drawn before Sasuke had crossed half the distance between them. With unreal speed his blade flicked out twice, the first time knocking both kunai out of the Uchiha's hands, the second time knocking him out of the air and onto his back at Naruto's feet. Naruto pressed the tip of his sword into Sasuke's neck with just enough pressure to draw a tiny drop of blood. The Junin froze, relieved that Naruto had only hit Sasuke with the flat of his blade, but also worried with the knowledge that if he suddenly decided to kill the Uchiha boy there would be nothing that they could do about it. Naruto was smiling devilishly at him. Oh come on Uchiha Teme, you're supposed to be better than this. I would have expected so much more. Sasuke glared at him, but he continued, you are going to have to become a whole world stronger if you are going to try and beat me, and I hope that you work really hard at it. His face raised and twisted around. He was now addressing all of the Konoha ninja, because as soon as Zabuza makes a full recovery, we are coming back. All of us. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. It had been 3 days since Naruto's threat, warning in the training area. Kiba had had a few more fights with Inari, but otherwise little had happened with the people of the Land of Waves. They had learned a few more things about what was happening in the economy and why they were so desperate to stop Gato. Each of the genin were training as hard as they possibly could, always in groups where at least one of the Junin were with them. Sasuke had convinced Kakashi to spend nearly every minute of the day training him one-on-one. Naruto's words had affected him deeply and he had thrown himself into his training like never before. He could feel himself improving at a much faster pace than ever before. Even his teammates had seen the tangible difference between his strength at the end of every day. Hinata had become more and more depressed every moment, believing that she was useless and a liability to the team. A feeling that Satsu did nothing to help assuage. Kurenai and Kiba both attempted to help her out, but neither made much headway. Shino kept to himself and trained with his insects. Sakura was getting restless. She had tried tagging along with Kakashi and Sasuke, but they had been so wrapped up in their own personal training that she had felt like a nuisance and decided not to go with them again. Kurenai had offered her to come train with her team, but Sakura had quickly realized that she was again just being a hindrance. She wouldn't train with Satsu if she had no other choice. And so she had taken to sneaking off on her own to practice in the woods. Sakura stood alone in the center of a large clearing. She held 4 shuriken in each hand, one in between each finger, and her face held a look of determination. She pulled her arms into an X shape over her chest and flung the shuriken at a nearby tree. She frowned at herself when she saw that none of the weapons had reached their marks. She had tried to slice through the leaves on the tree's branches, but each of the leaves that she had marked in her vision was still quite whole. This had been her 8th attempt. "Those flew very well," spoke a feminine voice from behind her. Sakura swiveled around to see a girl in a long pink kimono and smooth black hair. She was shockingly pretty, and Sakura found herself slightly jealous. "I'm sorry," she continued, "I didn't mean to interrupt. I had just come out here to gather a few medicinal herbs. I didn't expect to find anyone else." Sakura nodded. "That's all right, I wasn't making much progress anyways." The girl twisted her head in confusion. "I have been watching you for a little while, and I have to ask, what is causing you to try so hard?" Sakura raised an eyebrow in confusion. "What do you mean?" The girl in the pink kimono smiled as she answered. "Well, you have been training at least the last hour or so that I have been here, probably longer. You were sweating. You were cursing. You never took even a moment's break. I have rarely seen anyone work so hard at improving themselves." Sakura didn't answer. She simply continued to look confused. "I know that you are a ninja, that much is obvious, and of the few ninjas I have seen in my lifetime, I have seen some more talented but rarely one who has worked so hard at improving their talents." Sakura frowned as she turned back to the tree. "It is a long story." The girl sat on the ground. "I have plenty of time, and it is always nice to meet an interesting stranger." Sakura thought for a moment, took a deep breath and sat down in front of the girl. "My name is Haruno Sakura." She spoke. The girl smiled and nodded. "You may call me Haku." She produced a tea kettle from a bag that was slung over her back and placed it between the two. She poured a small canteen of water into the kettle and started a fire underneath. "So then, Haruno Sakura, what is your story?" Sakura shrugged. "I am a ninja just like you said, and I am currently on a mission. My first really dangerous mission actually." Haku nodded. "That sounds interesting. And I can understand why fear would motivate you to try and become stronger." Sakura shook her head. "That isn't it. That isn't why I am doing this." Haku gave her a look that seemed to ask her to continue. "Well, you see, one of the members of my team is someone who I am very fond of." "And you wish to impress him," Haku interrupted, "by becoming stronger and showing off your strength." It wasn't a question. Sakura nodded. "He was the rookie of the year of our village and everyone in the village loves him. He is the coolest and strongest guy in the—" She let her voice fade into nothingness. She was about to say that Sasuke was the strongest guy in the world, but unfortunately that illusion had been shattered only a few days ago. Haku nodded. She seemed to understand what Sakura had been trying to say. However, she looked slightly confused. "And you don't feel that he will care about you unless you are strong?" Sakura blinked in confusion herself. "Well, I have tried everything else I can to get his attention." She spoke as if what she was saying was the most obvious thing in the world. "I grew my hair out because they say that is what he likes. I have tried to show him my intelligence. I had the second highest score on the written test in my ninja exam, but he still completely ignores me. I know that he cares about strength, so that is what I am going for." Haku's look was now reprimanding. "Well, that doesn't sound like the type of person who you should be pining after." Sakura was now angry. "Don't you dare talk about Sasuke like that. He is the greatest guy in the world." Haku interrupted by raising her hand to cut Sakura off. "And yet," he continued, "he ignores you completely even though you are a very beautiful girl. Even though you are nice enough, sit down with a total stranger and regale him with such an interesting tale. If he won't love you for yourself, if you have to turn yourself into something else for him, then is he worth your time and effort?" Sakura only glared at her. Haku shrugged. "Fine. It is your life, not mine. I would reconsider though." She thought for a moment and twisted her head to the trees. "If you truly desire strength, then it will come to you." She poured Sakura a small cup of tea and began sipping her own. Sakura looked down at the plain, clay cup in her hands and the pale green liquid inside and took a sip. The drink was surprisingly good, though she didn't recognize whatever it was that flavored it. Haku smiled. You can become more skilled through training and pushing yourself to the extremes, but true strength has nothing to do with that. Sakura frowned. I don't understand. She replied truthfully, what would you know about it? Haku smiled. I have had a decent few experiences with ninja myself, and the one thing that I have learned without a doubt is that true strength comes not from training or anger. True strength comes from your heart. Sakura smiled and she dropped her head. This all sounded very nice, but it didn't seem very practical. Haku recognized her doubts. When you are fighting for yourself, then you are fighting within your own limitations. It is only when you are fighting for something that you truly love can you overcome unbeatable odds. When you are fighting for the things most precious to you, that is when you will find true strength. Sakura blinked in surprise. She didn't really expect something quite so profound. That is when you will know who it is that you truly love. Haku stood up and smiled at her. You will see. She bowed slightly and began walking away. Thank you for sharing so much with this young man. It is always nice to meet such an interesting stranger. And he walked away, back into the woods. Sakura sat for what felt like hours contemplating what Haku had said before something that she had said clicked into her head. Young man? Naruto sighed as he watched the three genin from the trees. He was certain that the scarlet-eyed Junin had discovered him, but he was glad that the genin were not quite as perceptive. He wanted to watch them without any obstructions. He didn't want them to act any differently than they ordinarily would because of his presence. He had made a few observations about these three. The Inuzuka had an enormous amount of potential. He worked hard, he had the guts, he pushed himself until his hands bled, and he was talented. Naruto was very impressed. His major weakness would be his temper, something that Naruto shared with him. He was also gruff and rough and almost brutally honest. Naruto liked him. He could see himself being friends with him if they had met under different circumstances. The little Hyuga girl was not quite so skilled. She slipped up a lot and it always made her flustered, at which point she would slip up more. She wasn't bad, but she had a serious problem with her confidence. Naruto suspected that if she could get over that, she would be a force to be reckoned with. Her Junin sensei tried to comfort her, and the Inuzuka looked like he desperately wanted to as well, though he wasn't sure how to go about doing it. The bug boy just ignored her as well as everyone else. Naruto felt sort of sorry for her. She seemed very, very nice. The Aburame was more skilled than either, but not as hard-working. It would not be long before the Inuzuka passed him by unless someone could light a fire under him. He was kept to himself, but not out of shyness like his lavender-haired teammate. He just preferred to talk to his bugs. Or at least that is what it looked like to Naruto. The guy was odd, no doubt about that. Naruto all in all was very impressed with Team. They each had a whole lot of potential, and he generally liked them all. Even the bug boy. They were interesting. He looked down to where Kiba and Hinata were training in taijutsu. Kiba was going light on her, but the fight was still somewhat mismatched. Naruto sighed. He hated just watching like this, it wasn't in his nature. Zabuza had ordered him to only observe and not interfere. But sitting in a tree and just watching was not something that Naruto was capable of doing. And Kurenai was currently distracted speaking to the Aburame. There was nothing stopping him. Zabuza-sama really should have known better. Naruto moved, catapulting himself into the air. He landed directly in between the two training genin, just as they both were moving to attack each other. Neither attack reached their target. Naruto deflected them both and, with a simply twist of his arms, sent both genin sprawling to the ground. Naruto began laughing. Instantly and predictably, Kurenai was behind him, a kunai at his neck. Naruto stopped laughing, though continued to grin. Hey Junin-san, he spoke in a completely calm and composed voice, as though he were greeting an old friend as opposed to someone who had a blade at his neck. Nice to see you again. I just thought I would take a moment and play with your students. Kurenai glared at him but didn't move. Naruto chuckled. Well, if you don't mind, I would very much like it if you would take this kunai off of my neck. With shocking speed he reached up and grabbed onto the Junin's arm and began pulling it away. Kurenai may have been more skilled in every way, but Naruto was physically the stronger, and so to the shock of everyone the blade slowly moved away from his neck. When it had reached a safe distance, Naruto ducked his head down and slipped out from underneath it. Kurenai glared at him. What do you want, punk? She asked with contempt in her voice. Naruto shrugged. Like I said, I wanted to play with your students for a while. He placed right hand over his heart and lifted his left into the air. Don't worry, I swear to Kami I won't break them. Kurenai readied her kunai again. And why on earth should I let you do that? She asked. Naruto was grinning. Because you are one person trying to teach three and I could be a big help with that. And also because I have a whole lot of experience and I could really help them. What motive could you possibly have for that? The Junin asked. We are your enemies. Naruto never stopped grinning. Well, because it would be fun, and because I like these guys. He gestured to the two confused genin on the ground. And we are only enemies by circumstance after all, and I would like for them to be as strong as possible after this is all over so that they will be better prepared for future dangers. He chuckled again. Besides, no matter how much they improve in the short amount of time they have, they won't be strong enough to stop us when my sensei has recovered. Suddenly his face turned grave, though he did not elaborate further. Kurenai scoffed. And why should I believe you? Naruto shrugged. I don't care if you believe me or not. I just thought that I could help you out a bit. Well, you can't, so get out or I will make you get out. Naruto rolled his eyes, but locked his hands into a hand seal and shined out. Naruto cursed as he walked through the woods. He had had similar results with the two Sharingan users. Not only had Kakashi killed the clone that he had used to watch them, but by the time another clone reached their training spot, they had left. Naruto has searched for them for another few minuets, but they seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. Wherever they were training, Naruto had not been able to find them. He wouldn't aid Satsu if he had no other choice, and besides, the jerk didn't seem to be into training at all. Apparently he didn't feel very threatened by Naruto's display. And so he was following the same path that Haku had the day before, searching for the pink-haired girl that he hoped would be there. He debated what he would say as to hopefully not scare her. He didn't want to do that. He reached the clearing faster than he expected and jumped into a nearby tree. Sakura, as he had hoped, was there, shadow boxing now. He sighed as he watched her pathetic attempts at improving herself. He admired the desire, but he knew from experience that without someone or something to show you what to do, no matter how hard you tried, you could never improve very much. She needed someone to train with, and he was going to give her just that. Naruto shined behind her and placed his hands over her wrists. He rested his head on her shoulder and smiled as he watched her eyes open wide in shock and fear. Your stance is too high, he whispered into her ear. Place your legs farther apart and bend your knees a little more. It will give you more stability. Sakura's breathing was heavy with a mixture of fear and excitement. What are you doing here? She asked. Naruto smiled kindly at her. I wanted to help you. You obviously cannot train with your sensei and the Uchiha, and I doubt anyone would tolerate that brown-haired freak, so I thought I would give you a few pointers. Sakura twisted around, finding herself face to face with the blonde boy. Why should I train with you? You are the bad guy, aren't you? Naruto frowned. I helped you before, didn't I? You can trust me. I promise that I will not harm you. Sakura looked doubtful. Naruto smiled as warmly as he could and continued. Please trust me, Sakura-san. I promise that, until my mission requires me to, I will not allow anything to harm you. Sakura shook in fear as she thought what he said over. She didn't really trust him, despite what he had done earlier. Honestly, she knew that it would be a stupid thing to agree to train with him. But on the other hand, if she declined his offer, she seriously doubted that he would just go and let her continue on her own. There was no Junin around to drive him away now, and she certainly wasn't strong enough. She had to placate him. Against her better judgment, she nodded. Naruto smiled at her and she dropped into a fighting stance, making sure to position her legs as he had suggested. Naruto allowed Sakura to attack first. She swung her fist in an uppercut toward Naruto's jaw. He grabbed her fist and with a gentle nudge, sent her sprawling onto her back. Naruto sighed. Don't just try for the strongest attacks, Sakura-san. They are all too often easily deflected. For a ninja, faster is better. Sakura looked ashamed for a moment, but nodded and readied herself again. The mock fight continued in the same general manner for the next few minutes. Naruto was never even close to being touched. His eyes watched Sakura almost as if she were moving in slow motion. Her moves were slow, though they did pack a decent force behind them. Occasionally he would give her some advice and she would try to adapt to them, but her improvements mere minimal. Of course Naruto knew that to improve in only a couple of minutes was a ridiculous expectation, But he still wanted to help her in some way before his time with her was up and they became foes again. Naruto was so caught up in his thoughts that he almost missed Sakura's kick. He caught it at the last possible second and twisted her leg until she fell onto the ground. "Let's take a break for a minute, Sakura-san. I want to talk to you for a moment." Sakura looked sad, but nodded and shifted into a sitting position. "I have a question," she asked. Naruto grinned and sat down across from her. "Shoot. How did you know I was out here?" Naruto chuckled, embarrassed. "Well, a friend of mine told me that you would be here actually. He stumbled across you yesterday." Sakura looked shocked. "You mean that lad, guy who I talked to? The one who was gathering herbs?" Naruto burst out laughing. "Don't worry." He choked out between breaths. "You aren't the first person to mistake Haku for a girl, and you probably won't be the last. Actually, it comes in handy in some of our missions. Horny men are much more willing to help pretty girls." Sakura lowered her head. "Who are you?" she asked in a quiet voice. "One moment I am terrified of you. The next you are helping me and talking to me like we were friends or something. I don't understand you at all. My job is to protect the man who you are trying to kill." Naruto frowned at this. "You shouldn't be doing this for me." Naruto chuckled. "The truth, Sakura-san, is that if we are stopped, it will be because of the Junin, not you genin. I want to help you because I like you. I don't want you to die, now or in the future. I am hoping that if you can become stronger now, then you are less likely to die in the future." Sakura shook her head. "But why? I mean, I don't hardly know you at all. Why should you care?" Naruto turned his head to the sky and smiled. "I was a boy from Konoha myself." Sakura's eyes opened wide in shock. "I was run out of the village when I was only 5 for reasons that I would rather not talk about. I didn't actually do anything bad, the villagers were just prejudiced. One day they gathered their torches and pitchforks and chased me into the forests." He looked down and smiled sadly. "I never really hated them for it, you know. I don't know why, but instead it just made me want to earn their trust. I suppose I still love the village hidden in the leaves despite all that it has done to me." He looked up and smiled. "That's why I was first drawn to you and your teammates, although I also like you all as people too." His eyes narrowed, except for that Satsu freak, and the Uchiha. Sakura looked contemplative for a moment and then a look of understanding washed over her. "I remember you." Naruto looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes. You were that little blonde goofball who was always pulling pranks on everyone. I watched from my window when you were run out of town. I wanted to say something to try and stop them, or at least understand what was going on, but I was too afraid." She suddenly looked ashamed. Naruto smiled kindly. "Ah, don't worry about it. If I haven't blamed the things Konoha did to me, then I certainly don't think anything bad of you." Sakura shook her head as though trying to erase her thoughts. "So what happened then?" she asked. Naruto beamed. "Then I met my savior, Zabuza-sama. He has been harsh, he has done bad things, but he saved me when I was almost nothing. I will willingly give everything of myself to him. Despite his flaws, he is the most important person in my life, and the greatest man I have ever known. Anyways, I spent the next 7 years with him, running from hunter nins, fighting, training, living off of whatever money we could make, and even killing. And here I am." Sakura slowly shook her head. "I don't understand how anyone can live such a life." Naruto shrugged. "You get used to it, I suppose. It is easy for me now." He paused for a moment but then smiled. "But enough story time for today, we need to continue training." Sakura looked worried for a moment but shook it off. She stood up and took a fighting stance. Naruto slowly shook his head. "I am going to teach you one of my jutsu, but first you need to learn another exercise." Sakura looked confused. Naruto continued. "I heard about how that cockroach of a teammate of yours was able to walk on water. A pretty darn advanced technique for a worm to use." He chuckled to himself. "With the chakra control that you have, you should be able to master it pretty easily, especially for how easily you were able to climb the trees before." Sakura slowly nodded. "All right, what do I have to do?" Sakura cursed as she fell into the water again. She had been trying so hard to learn this for the last few hours. Naruto simply told her that it took far more control than climbing a tree, but the idea behind it was the same. She couldn't help but feel that she should have this down by now. She turned her head to Naruto, who was practicing his taijutsu with a shadow clone. She felt sort of pathetic watching him. He obviously wasn't even trying when they had practiced before. His attacks now were faster than she could possibly follow. At that moment he seemed to realize that she had fallen again. Huh? What's the matter, Sakura? Maybe I should have been paying more attention to what you were doing. He looked sheepish. Sakura glared at him. Naruto walked over onto the water and lifted her up onto her feet. Come on, Sakura-san. I'll help you this time. Without warning he twisted her around until her back was pressed into his chest and wrapped his arms around her waist. What? Sakura blushed, confused. Naruto smiled. Just like with the tree climbing exercise, I will hold you steady until you can connect to the water on your own. That way you can get a better idea as to how to mold your chakra into your feet. Sakura gulped but nodded, and Naruto set her feet onto the water, making sure that he didn't let her fall any further. Sakura focused her chakra into her feet. It wasn't exactly right. She could tell that if Naruto let go she would fall into the water again. She tried again. Again it wasn't right, so she made another adjustment. She smiled as she realized the point of this. It was as though she could try 10 times per second rather than once before she fell. After about a minute she felt as though she had succeeded in getting her chakra just right. She held it for a moment, making sure that she wouldn't lose it, and then turned her head up to her unlikely teacher. Alright, I'm ready. Naruto nodded and slowly and gently let her go. She felt as though she were going to lose her balance for a moment and swayed from side to side before steadying herself. She smiled as she realized that she had done it. Naruto grinned. There, see, you can do it. But just to let you know, this isn't complete yet. You were able to get your chakra right this time because you could make it that way over time. Now you have a good idea as to how your chakra is supposed to be, but you still need to learn to get it that way in an instant. Sakura nodded, but her face was still beaming. Naruto smiled at her, but either way, your chakra control should be good enough now to be able to learn my special jutsu. He spoke in a loud, excited voice. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.